What's up, everybody? We're back at it again with another Monster Hunter Sucks video. This time, I've got my buddy, Mr. MH, but you can just call him MH. He is a 4U aficionado. Homie has played so much 4U. He's been playing a lot with me recently, too. Quick fun fact, this guy was one of the final people that were keeping the servers alive whenever Nintendo finally shut down Monster Hunter servers.
What you're seeing now is a recording on that day, 1 minute prior to the planned shutdown time, followed by some photos I took in the subsequent days. I wanted to see this game out, and I was still online and in a lobby 7 days later on April 16th, where another player by the name of Lex was also still online and rejoined my lobby to say that we were the only players left. Hours later, I came back to see that he was gone, and a few days after that, on the 21st of April New Zealand time, I was finally disconnected by an error of some kind, or I was booted from my lobby. I just might have been the last man standing online in 4 Ultimate.
Keeping 4U alive just for another day longer. MH, tell us a little bit about yourself.
What's up, guys? Good to be on here. I'm ready to jump on and have a bit of fun. I am not just a 4U glazer. I've played a lot of the game, but yeah, started off with MH3 actually. So I am a 3rd generation player and been playing for a long time, but yeah, spent a lot of time in 4U, especially. Yeah, a lot of experience with it. I definitely don't have all of the information and all of the facts, and my experience is just one experience. So, you know, obviously a lot of people have got a much different experience. Judging by this video, obviously, you know, my thoughts are not universally held, even though a lot of people like 4U. So yeah, it's been cool, man. Like seeing you, you know, come through the series, you know, now you're playing 4U, giving that a red hot crack, and yeah, helping you out, seeing your experience. It's been awesome. So yeah, I'm excited to this video. I watched a very small amount of it just to kind of get a rough idea of what's going on. But yeah, it's interesting to see how so many people can have like a different take on things. And yeah, interested to see what he's got to say and have a bit of a discussion about it. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. I am just a smaller guy starting out making videos. I have not done that much, and I'm very thankful to just be here and be a part of your community, man. So yeah.
Hey man, thanks for, you know, coming in and doing this with me. We've been running some 140 guild quests and really biting into 4U, and MH has been kind of like my tour guide, so I figured this guy would be perfect for the job. I also like your content, man. I know you haven't, you said you haven't done too much, but you make good stuff when you make it.
Yeah, I'm still learning. I'm just getting better, and, you know, just trying to have a bit of a casual, relaxed approach to making vids, because I am still learning, and there are a lot of other people that I'm just happy watching videos from, to be honest. So it's easy to like come home, watch other people and the great stuff they're making, rather than me possibly coming in with some value and perspective. So thank you, that means a lot. It's been cool so far.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Okay, real quick question before we get started. You see the title. Why Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate disappointed me. You think you're going to be disappointed in 4 Ultimate after this video?
Well, it turns out there are a lot of different perspectives on all of these different games. So
wait, hold on. Are you telling me that people can like some Monster Hunter titles but dislike other ones?
Yeah,
that's impossible,
terrible.
dude.
Terrible, right?
That's terrible. I honestly, I think you've got the tinfoil hat on, dude.
No, I get it, right? Like, and there's different things. I mean, different people value all sorts of different things, and yeah, it's completely fine. You know, I've been critical of a lot of different things within the series, even though I love the stuff and been playing it for a long time. It's, you know, obviously where we get a lot of critique is coming from a place of like, hey, we really enjoy this stuff and we want it to be better and we want to see it grow. So yeah, I mean, hey, interested to see what he's got to say. I don't think I really enjoyed my time with 4U, and like you say, I was one of the last people online, probably maybe the last person online on 3DS just to like show my appreciation for the game. But yeah, there's a lot of things about it that are not perfect, that could have been improved, and yeah, just it's completely fine, obviously, for folks that overall didn't have a great or as good of an experience as maybe they were hoping for. So let's see, let's get into it. And I mean, just go piece by piece, because there's obviously a lot to talk about.
Definitely, definitely. The reason for this video, as you can see, sure, it's a channel with only 307 subscribers. We're not going to nickel and dime subscriber amounts. I don't think that having a large amount or a low amount of subscribers disqualifies you for making good or bad videos. But this video is interesting because it was made 2 years ago, and sure, it's like a little late to the party to do like a Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate essay or things to that nature. This may have been like in that time period where we had people like Pikmin Jacob making videos about Dose and 4. Even Heavy Wings made a video about 4. And so, you know, maybe it was around that time period. 4 was kind of like on the topic of discussion. I think that pulling out these old videos and looking at it from a framework of, it's not just, oh, Monster Hunter Cycle, Monster Hunter Cycle. No, we looked at a video, the previous video series, Why Monster Hunter Sucks Now, a 10-year-old video by Mazeron, and now we have this video, Why Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate Disappointed Me. We have a video about 3rd gen Monster Hunters, mostly talking about 3 Ultimate, and now we have this video talking about 4 Ultimate. Now, we're going to see what the Adventures of Sparrow and Braun have to say, but I just think it's interesting to, you know, pull out these time capsules, see what was going on, see different topics of discussion, and see other viewpoints. And you might be kind of surprised. There's a lot of things that are said, once again, in this video, just like the previous ones, that are basically brought up today to describe other titles, including like Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter Wilds, even Monster Hunter World got a little bit of this.
Pretty much bang on, like along those lines. I was just gonna say, like, you know, coming from, you know, watching your last couple vids and, you know, similar sort of thing, right? Where, you know, Mazeron's talking about 3U, and I started with Try, so I have a little bit of perspective of like what was kind of going on, but I was a young guy at the time, obviously, so it's a bit different. But yeah, it's very similar, and it's always good to like look back on stuff and say, hey, what truths can we try to get to the bottom of about this stuff, and what was being discussed, and how could that be instructive for suggesting things or giving feedback towards the future, because that's what it's all about. It's like, hey, we enjoy this stuff a lot, and there are a lot of things that we want to see get better. And, you know, as much as we poke fun at the whole thing of like Monster Hunter fans absolutely hate a lot of these games, it seems like, and there's a lot of negative stuff going on, it's all probably coming from a place of people wanting stuff to be in a better state in certain areas.
Or just personal taste.
Also, yeah, personal tastes. Different people value different things. You know, I value, you know, I've made a couple of videos talking about in-game stuff. I do really value that after starting off in 3rd gen. And, you know, talismans especially being, in my opinion, in a pretty dire state for their first outing, you know. And that is the thing, like, we've seen a lot of changes come to things that were not great originally. So that's what it's all about. And I just wanted to say quickly as well, just mad respect for you guys covering that previous video. And Alpha, super knowledgeable guy, you know, been playing for a long time, brought some great research. You know, I am definitely not at that level of knowledge and expertise, even though I've been playing for a while. So yeah, mad respect to him, and for you guys covering that video, breaking down a lot of like specific things, trying to get to the bottom of some stuff and provide some feedback and give some thoughts. Great commentary. So thank you very much for the listen.
Hey, appreciate it. Shout out to Alpha, by the way. Check him out, MH United on YouTube.
Let's stepping into some big boots.
Yeah,
it's fairly fair to say I am stepping into some very big shoes here, but I'm ready to jump in and see what I can what value and analysis I can provide. So let's do it.
Yeah, dude, let's have a good time. All right, we'll start this video. Let me know if you want me to pause. I will also be pausing periodically.
Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate was disappointing. Okay, before you start typing your extremely well thought out paragraphs in the comments about how I'm wrong, you're right, and I'm a big poophead, just hear me out. What I mean is, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate is disappointing to me. Who am I? Well, I'm not important. But what is important is people like me. Before I go into what that is, let me define what Monster Hunter is. What is Monster Hunter? Essentially, Monster Hunter is a game where you fight monsters, build gear out of their carcasses, fight stronger monsters,
Makes sense.
build stronger gear, so on and so forth until you finally conquer the hardest of foes.
So, a couple of funny things. I did like how he was like, who I am doesn't really matter, but what's important is that people like me do matter. Even if your opinion is in the minority, maybe you like Almudron from Monster Hunter Rise and I want to see more Almudron, or Gyarados, or Lavassioth. You know, maybe you're one of those people. There's other people that also like that. Last video, I was going over people that like first and second gen. Whenever a overwhelming majority of the player base does not, they would prefer third gen and up. Some of them only preferring fifth gen and up. So, you know, even if you are a minority opinion, there are people that also share that opinion with you. And yeah, they have voices that should be heard too. I do like that kind of like sentiment.
Yeah, well, everyone comes in with, you know, everyone is different, and everyone's going to get what they want out of the game. And that's the great thing, is obviously about games in general. You're free to approach stuff how you want, and if you want to look online and, you know, get help, or you're struggling with certain things, or, you know, you want to improve certain elements of your play, all those options are there. You know, you don't have to. That's the great thing about just this sort of stuff in general. So, and like you were talking about, I also, yeah, that sentiment of I don't matter, who I am is not super important. I respect that, because it's not about, oh, I'm some, you know, MLG gamer or whatever, or anything about that. There's still value to be had, even if you're in a minority of opinion.
Yeah.
So
giving a voice to
have
people that otherwise wouldn't be heard, in a way.
Yeah.
You know, even though technically you are using your own voice to do it, you know, and you are using your opinion to do it, there are people that do share that opinion with you, you know?
But I appreciate, you know, folks being humble, because I'm of similar opinion with that sort of thing. Like, a lot of the time, you know, my view on things, it's just one view. And to be honest, I am just a guy. So I respect folks that have a humble approach to like providing their own thoughts and views, you know? So respect. Is this Sparrow or is this Brawn? Which
I think
which
they
one of these
introduced
guys?
themselves as Braun. I think they did.
Brawn. Respect to Brawn for having a very humble approach to providing a minority opinion. I respect that.
Yeah. Well, we'll glaze you a little bit, Braun, before, if you ever see this. We'll glaze you a little bit before we rip apart some of the points you
we're
might
not
make.
coming after you.
You know, we might make a little joke, a few jokes. You know, try to keep it light, man. All right.
Unless you play anything later than 3rd gen, then you just repeat the loop until you die. Okay, so then what is so disappointing about Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate? The game invented the powered-up monsters. It invented the investigation mechanics through Guild Quest, which becomes some of the hardest fights in the game towards the end of G rank. Well, that's kind of the problem. Beginning with Monster Hunter 4, the monsters in the series just stop fighting back, essentially, until the end of the game.
Monster Hunter Wilds? Wait,
Yeah?
maybe he's talking about Monster Hunter Rise. Wait, no, he's talking about Monster Hunter 4U? The Darling? No way.
Yeah.
Hold on. This can't be right. Hold on.
To put it frankly, in Monster Hunter 4 and 4 Ultimate, the game is insultingly easy in the beginning. By now, I'm sure you've noticed
No.
the videos playing in the corners of the screen here. Before I go any further, I want to point out that I'm not a pro. I'm at best an average player. I take damage often. I'm constantly getting hit. It's a regular occurrence to finish a quest with at least one feint. This is not a case of me being too good for the game. To illustrate the degree of ease Monster Hunter 4U presents, I took on a series of quests against the flagships of both Monster Hunter 4 and Monster Hunter Freedom 2. I'll post a playlist of the hunts I recorded for this video, and you can decide for yourself my level of aptitude. I use the same armor stats with an identical loadout.
Okay. So already we have the weird false equivalency thing that people do with like, oh, I faced the flagships of both games. And with the same defense and all these other things. You can't really replicate things perfectly from one game to another. Different flagships have different roles that they play. For example, Monster Hunter World has Nergigante as the flagship. Sure, you get a tiny showdown with him on Zora Magdaros' back, but his fight is in high rank, and it is near the end of the game. Something like Gore Magala in 4 and 4U, he was the flagship of 4. Gore Magala is a mid-tier monster. You fight him multiple times throughout the course of literally like the middle of low rank, like 4-star out of 7 stars. Like you fight him near the middle of like the upper middle portion of low rank. And then you fight Shagaru Magala as the final boss of low rank 4 village. Now, these two are flagships, but they're not one and the same. Their design's very different. It reminds me of like Magnamalo. Like Magnamalo, you also fought him in low rank, and the sentiment was kind of funny because people were like, "Why is he so easy? Why is he?" Especially after demo Magnamalo, but it's like you fought him in low rank village. You know, of course he's gonna be easier than you remember a different flagship being because you came from World and you fought Nergigante in high rank. You know, so like these different flagships have different roles of importance. Gore ends up establishing that rivalry, but the rivalry is finished with Shagaru in 4. Now, Freedom 2, Tigrex, funny enough, plays a similar role where he plays as your rival in a lot of ways. But Tigrex doesn't evolve into a super Tigrex, he stays Tigrex. So they have to make him play that role differently than the role that Gore played. So like there's false equivalencies with these, oh, it has to be the same thing because it's a flagship. They have different roles. And the defense, having the same amount of defense, that's still not a proper test, because different games have different like abilities to get easier, higher defense. The earliest points in defense matter much more than the later points of defense, just with the way that the damage formula works in Monster Hunter. Second gen damage formula is even different than the rest of the series damage formula. So having 41 defense in Village or whatever is going to be different than having 41 defense in 4. So like, that's one thing I don't like about these odd tests. They don't really show much. And I actually touch on that in my own difficulty video, where I chastise a test that is literally almost bar for bar the same as this one in a lot of ways. So it's just, I don't know. If you wanted to prove that something was easier or harder because of some form of defense or like how much HP you took or whatever, it's simplistic. It's too simple. It's not as reliable to actually test in that way. I don't know.
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's not an easy.
This is one element of it.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. It's nothing you can just like wrap up in a singular test with a weird one-to-one comparison.
Yeah, and no doubt he's going to be getting into a variety of other things very shortly. Obviously, this is just one component to it. You know, defense values, damage formula stuff. Each game handles that differently. So, yes, the damage you receive and also the damage you deal, I suppose, as well, obviously, being very different. You know, that's an element of things, yes. And he's probably about to get into a variety of other things. You know, there's so many things when you're trying to evaluate this stuff. It's complicated, and I don't envy folks coming in trying to really get to the bottom of this stuff, because it's hard. You know, especially within MH games, there are so many things. You know, look at the defense values at where he's playing within the games. Is 41 defense even a realistic amount that you would have at those points within the games? One could argue no. You know, how much defense does one piece of armor give you going through low rank? Are you building one set of gear at the start of the game and then going as far as you can? Are you building a set of armor right before you take on Gore or Tigrex in Freedom Unite? You know, so many different things. Anecdotal stuff. It's like, what weapon are you using? Are you going to be able to get more CC? Are you playing a weapon that allows you to have more options for positioning? So many elements that come into things, aside from obviously just defense and damage values. So no doubt he will be getting into some of that fairly shortly. But yeah, it's a complicated thing. And the tests are, you know, tests like this. It's hard to come to some sort of, you know, conclusion about that sort of thing. So let's see where he goes with it. You know,
we'll let him cook. Yeah, we'll let him cook.
With the following exceptions: taking max and ancient potions to match the health plus 50 skill of the 4U armor, and an armor talent and charm in Freedom Unite to make my defense 41, while keeping my dragon resistance neutral due to the hidden dragon on Tigrex's charges. In 4 Ultimate, I took null berries to deal with Gormagala's frenzy. I also took weapons that both shared equivalent base raw and similar damage equal to the following weaknesses: lightning for Tigrex and fire for Gormagala. My reasoning for those specific stats is because I beat the entire low-rank village with the partially leveled chainmail set. From Tetsukabra, the last monster I fought before making the set, all the way to Shagaru Magala. That's why I decided against using Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, as the base defense granted to the player is actually more than the total defense that I used for the experiment. Back to 4 Ultimate. I got to Shagaru without having to...
Okay, so he went over a lot of parameters where he tried to equalize the test footing. I think that he put in a lot of effort into this test. It still isn't a perfect one-to-one test, no matter how much you try to replicate the circumstances. But you know, I will commend Braun for the effort that he put in. I mean, like you said, it's complex.
For sure.
It's hard to narrow down, you know, an actual comparison. Like, even he'll probably touch on I think he does touch on this later, comparing monsters from their 4 outing to previous outings. But even comparing a monster that is in one game to another monster that is in a different game, from moveset changes to role changes, all these different things, the one-to-one comparisons for other monsters, it's not, you know, it's not a good comparison. Are we going to compare low-rank Gormagala to Wild's high-rank Gormagala? You know what I mean? So there's
yeah. Well, even then, it's Tigrex is in MH4U, so it's you know, what's the value that you could gain from looking at Gormagala versus, let's say, Freedom Unite Tigrex, when, you know, yes, Tigrex in 4U is not the flagship of 4th gen, but, you know, is that maybe an easier way to get some sort of evaluation about difficulty elements? Maybe. Why not look at that? I don't know.
Even then, that would have holes, because we're dealing with a Tigrex that doesn't have exhaust versus a Tigrex that does have exhaust.
Yep.
You know, there, and that is a fundamental difference. The monster that was created to be an oppressive non-stop force, all of a sudden is a force that does stop. You know, it's one-to-one comparisons, man. They are killer for trying to compare these games, because these monsters are not designed to be the same things over and over again. It's a pitfall that happens a lot in the community.
To engage in half the core loop of Monster Hunter. The only set I had to make was when fighting Zenogre. Chainmail armor has poor lightning resistance, so I made a Bahanabra mix set and beat him with that. Ha! See? You did have to engage. Well, I should probably point out that before Shagaru, Zinogre is the only fight I actually loved in 4 Ultimate. But even then, the set that I used I purposely maxed out at 41 defense and beat Zinogre with no issue. To tell the truth, had I thought about Feline Thundercaller, I probably wouldn't have even had to make that set. Contrast that with my experience in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, where every new star rank of quest required me to make some new set to handle the monsters that were slapping me around. Almost every new encounter for me required a change.
Yes, we can talk about that. So, yeah, this is this whole like discussion about, oh, I got through to X point with chainmail armor. You know, this whole discussion about, is that a bad thing that you can get through X amount of content without needing to grind or engage with, you know, the mechanic of upgrading your gear or that sort of thing. And it's a complicated, you know, discussion point. I mean, I even made like a brief comment in my first video that, you know, my first video, not super proud of my first video. There's a lot of things that I could have done better and a lot of things that I should have said and things that I shouldn't have said. But one of the things that I spoke about was getting all the way through Wilds. Obviously, my first video was talking about Wilds. And me getting through to pretty much like HR gender hard, right? With rank 1, rank 2 armor. Basically starting armor, you know, low rank armor. So getting through a lot of the game without needing to go and, you know, feel the need to farm for a set or something like that. And this is the thing. I mean, I don't even necessarily know if that is a bad thing, because yes, the gear component is one element of the game, but the skill element is obviously there. And I think a lot of folks are trying to get through as much progression as they can with whatever gear that they have and seeing how far their skill can take them. And yes, there's something to be said about, hey, what is that journey like of, you know, what challenges came along the way, at what points did you adjust your build, or, you know, different items or something like that. But that whole like ethereal conversation of like, hey, if you're able to get as far as you can with the skill that you have, with, you know, the gear component not being there and you not up-speccing your gear, is that a bad thing? I don't know. Because for me at least, and we've talked about this as well, as far as, you know, difficulty goes, you've obviously mentioned and said a lot about a lot of the progression, you just cobbling together whatever armor that you can make, you know, not prioritizing like a full set, you know, an optimized build at many points through the progression. And I play a similar way, you know, I'm trying to build something that is usable, but I'm not building an entirely new set of armor at each rank in a lot of these games. Obviously, I've played a little bit of Freedom Unite, but even in many previous games, even in 4U, like we were just playing through 4U again, I basically built one set, you know, the double gore set, when I had access to it, and I tried to see as far as I could go with it, you know, progressing well into G rank. And yes, my defense was not up to, you know, a level where I would survive a lot of attacks, but is that a bad thing? I don't know, because I'm using my skill as a player to, you know, be challenged and have an enjoyable experience without needing to farm gear every 5 seconds, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't think it's as cut and dry as like, oh, I didn't feel the need to go and make a set of armor at these different points, and that's a bad thing, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sorry, I probably worded that poorly, but...
Well, no, I get you. And, you know, as you mentioned prior, the whole like Wilds thing running through in low gear, a similar thing happened during Rise era. People were doing that same thing and trying to use it as a dig to say that Rise was baby game, easy mode. A toddler could beat it with one hand. doing the same thing, like running low gear.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just a thing. it's a byproduct of the way that the damage model works across Monster Hunter. The truth of the matter is, if you're a seasoned Monster Hunter player and you fought like the hardest content before in like other games, you're used to playing against monsters that can one tap you or two tap you only.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever, and they're also fast. Most of them are fast because you're fighting them in like G rank or at the end of high rank. You know, if you're fighting like high rank event quests in base games, you know, if you played old gen. And there were even a couple of those types of quests in new gen as well. Namely things like Extreme Behemoth, freaking the event Magnamalo that could one tap you even in MR gear in Rise.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you're used to playing against stuff like that already, what do you think you're going to do whenever you play the next game and everything can either two tap you? And because, you know, you're not upgrade, they're not meant to two tap you because you're playing through low rank. In fact, I just did another low rank village playthrough in 4U. I was running mostly like, I think rarity 2 armor, like all the way through. And I was actually like, you know what? I'm actually going to use armor spheres this time. Because in my first playthrough, I didn't use any armor spheres despite there being an abundance of them in my inventory. I didn't use any. Well, this time I decided to use them. And I was able to eat like 4, 5, 6 hits, you know, without having to even worry. If you're fighting against monsters that are coded to be slower, coded to have more pauses because they're low rank. They're the low rank versions of monsters. This isn't like even just a new gen thing. This was old gen stuff too. These monsters were slower in low rank. Let more pauses, more taunts after moves. Certain like 4U Gravios, he'll beam you and then he'll have his blast dust follow. Not in low rank. No, he will beam and his belly will be wide open. You know, like low rank quite literally is, hey, you can't really make great builds because the skill economy is really low. Just eat, get your defense up, and plow the monsters as you can. You know, it's time for you to learn how to fight these monsters. It's the onboarding time. And it's a slow build progression into high rank, and also a clever way to recycle monsters. Let's be honest. It is a clever way to recycle monsters. They recycle monsters, they give them new moves, maybe some different follow-ups. They increase the speed, damage, health. Boom, all of a sudden you've got instead of a blue slime, you've got a green slime that does more damage. You know, it's Dragon Quest rules. So the
subspecies or variants or
true, they were much more they were much more overt with it back in the day with subspecies. You get to fight blue Rathalos, you know, pink Rathian, it's got a new move and it does so like
classic.
There's the concept of guy who is clearly used to fighting monsters that can two-shot them and they move faster. All of a sudden fight slower monsters that can two-shot them. Of course they can fucking beat the game like that. Are you think you're I'm able to do this. I'm able to do this no problem. Well, of course, you've been fighting faster monsters that do the same thing effectively. You weren't engineered to take 2 damage, to only take 2 hits and die, but you can do that if you want to. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just a byproduct of what you're able to do through Monster Hunter's design. Unless we're talking second gen where monsters do a lot of extra damage to a certain degree. That's just the way things have been. And that's one of the points of contention Mazeron brings up in his Why Monster Hunter Sucks video, talking about 3rd gen and up. Not to mention, Braun brought it up, but the 50 free defense in the international release of Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, you know, like there's, it's a flex. It's more of a flex than something being indicative of, hey, this game clearly is a pushover. Because it's like, of course the low rank monsters are pushovers. You're a seasoned player. You didn't get dementia in the middle of going from one game to the next. You understand how these games work. I had never played a old gen title without some kind of cheese before. I played through GU.
Yep.
I fought the EX Deviants.
GU,
I did
yeah.
all this stuff, but I never touched guild style. You can't roll spam the way you can in new gen. You can't roll as far as you can in new gen. Besides Rise, you have half the iframes of new gen. So like literally everything is much harder to avoid in general, alongside you just having more commitment on the end of your attacks. If you bounce, you have more animation commitment for bouncing. For drinking, you have a whole ass flex. There's all sorts of different things going on.
Yeah.
I played with absolute readiness, absolute evasion. I played with adept dodges. I played with valor sheathing. Those were the things that I was rocking. Things that could make up for my lack of even having to learn how to understand how old gen monsters worked. For the longest time, I didn't understand it, but I didn't really have much problems with GU because they inundate you with so much stuff that is, for lack of a better term, it really is overpowered. And then I do one little training arc playing guild style IG. And then I moved to 4U. And 4U, there was a little bit of a learning curve, getting used to the movement and everything else without having the cheese options and all that. But I still got eased into it. I didn't fail a single quest running through village. I didn't have many problems. I never felt overwhelmed by the game in any sense. I felt like the curve was just decent. I felt like it was good. And I had a lot of fun. I wasn't sitting there wringing my hands wondering why the game wasn't beating my ass because I heard old gen's a meat grinder. No, I had fun running through the game regardless. And I played pretty naturally. You know, I tried to play it similar to how I play the new gen games since I started in 2018. I'm not making builds through low rank and high rank. I'm just kind of mostly upgrading for defense and things like that. And I'm mostly focusing on weapon upgrades if I go through that. And I really didn't use armor spheres or anything. In fact, I didn't use armor spheres at all in the first 4U run, like I said earlier. So it's like different strokes for different folks, but it's not like it's being able to be like, I beat the game whenever everything was able to two-shot me, and I beat the game whenever things were needing 4 hits to take me out or something. You still beat the game. Like,
or you're still enjoying it.
Or you're still enjoying it. And it's like, you can put challenge run parameters on, but that's not necessarily a test of your resolve. You know, if the route that he's about to go with this is I carded more against like this monster versus another monster, maybe it could be a weapon matchup. It could be, you know, not just like lack of experience fighting a monster, not maybe you just struggle against a specific monster more.
It could be a million things.
Yeah, it could be a million things.
A million different things.
Yeah. And also, like, even if once again, back to that point, even if it's the same monster, right? Zinogre G rank in 4 or 4U has that crazy ass high damaging claw where he does it 3 times, and the tracking is incredible. It is incredible.
I hate that.
He never gets that again. The entire series. Like, the tracking is nowhere near that. Not even Apex Zinogre from Rise. Not even Thunderlord Zinogre from GU can do that to you. And it's actually nuts. I can honestly say I fear 4U G rank Zinogre more than I fear GU Hyper Zinogre, Thunderlord Zinogre, Apex Zinogre from Sunbreak. Like, I actually fear base Zinogre. And I even fear base Zinogre more than I fear Stygian Zinogre.
Right.
So it's like
140 Apex in 4U.
Oh, dude, the Apex Zinogre is crazy, dude.
Even more insane, obviously.
Yeah, that thing is crazy. But yeah, like, going from like one monster to the other, or trying to use this example, like that's just how hard it is to really like compare difficulties in these games, man. It's not easy. It's not simple. It would require some kind of mathematician meticulously writing down spreadsheets worth of experiments and work to even be able to capture or quantify how difficulty might be able to work. And even then, they will still be beholden to their weapon matchups, like their preferred weapon types they like to play, things like that. It's hard work, man. It's hard work out here.
It's tough sledding, and I said, hey, I don't envy folks wanting to get into objective detail about that stuff, because yeah, it's really difficult to talk about difficulty, mind the pun. But yeah, it depends, and it's like, hey, we're all gamers, we're playing this stuff to have fun, have an enjoyable experience. Certain games like Monster Hunter, we're coming in with, you know, some sort of expectation about, hey, we want to have challenges, we want to overcome those challenges, we want to be rewarded for that. That's kind of the experience and the expectation coming in. So, you know, we're mostly coming to play these games for the enjoyment, and it depends on how do you want to be about talking about granular details and objective things that may or may not be taking away or diminishing from that expectation of I'm coming in and expecting some sort of challenge or difficult experience where I can feel good for overcoming that and feeling rewarded, you know? So it's tough, and there are definitely objective things, no doubt, that he will be getting into, and things that he's already talked about. You know, objective things like damage values changing between the games, exhaust being a thing, amount of iframes changing between games, the amount of hit zone changes, certain monsters having different hit zones across different games, the movement, especially from new gen onwards, where rudimentary movement of monsters and even the player change. How does that affect things? You know, objective changes that you could argue, you know, and overpowered things, objectively strong things like you spoke about, mount spamming in certain iterations, adept style, valor style, double absolute,
Flash
Wrong
bombs
Gigas in 3U, yeah, flash bombs, rock steady in world, temporal mantle in base world, you know, certain weapons like Grongigas in 3U, Kelby bow, Devil Joe cluster HBG in base world, sticky Rajang HBG in Iceborne. You know, so many like objective things that, you know, are perhaps diminishing or, you know, taking away from that expectation of having a certain level of difficulty, but it's different for everybody. And a lot of it is anecdotal as well, with folks talking about their own experience. So I respect, obviously, you know, some sort of test here, you know, trying to draw conclusions, but yeah, it's super difficult. And it's, like I say, it's anecdotal of like, are you going to be playing through the games that way? What's your approach to progression? And that is like a big conversation, I think, that maybe is not held enough, of like, a lot of people put a lot of stock into the progression and how difficult that is. Whereas for me, I'm not coming in with the expectation of the progression, the base progression or core progression, really providing a ton of challenge, especially for me as a veteran player. Obviously, if you're just coming in as a brand new player, and you've seen folks talk about Monster Hunter in the past as though it's, you know, a challenging franchise, a lot of learning to be done, weapons to master, you're going to come in, obviously, and probably feel that a lot more. But for me and a lot of other players, obviously, that have been playing for a long time, I don't think most of us, and this is an assumption, I'm not going to assume that the base progression is going to offer me a ton of really challenging stuff. And I'm perfectly happy making crap armor and seeing how far I can go before I need to upgrade my stuff. I'm not expecting to need to build a ton of new sets throughout the progression. I'm expecting that to come at the end of the game. And I enjoy build making, optimizing, setups, looking for chase items to fine tune my builds, trying out different weapons with different techniques, all of that stuff. But I'm not expecting that to come through a lot of the core progression. I'm expecting that at the end of the game, which is why the end game stuff has been a big talking point for me, because it's not to say that the base progression shouldn't be a priority to have a lot of meat there and to have a lot of design and focus put into it, because I think that's still important. But I'm completely fine with, having that in a separate bucket of, okay, that difficulty and that progression is something different, and I'm not expecting, that part of the game to provide that. I'm expecting the end of the game, and then we have a whole different discussion about, okay, what are the end game environment? What's the difficulty like there? What are the different things that are being offered in that part of the game? So yeah, a lot of anecdotal stuff and preference stuff as well. So
well, that's the whole funny thing, right? So like right now, even Braun is using Freedom 2 and Freedom Unite as a lot of the like comparison points. Whenever those games compared to the PS2 titles, 1, DOS, G, those are considered to be easier in comparison, steps down in difficulty. In fact, funny enough, with like Alpha and some of the old school guys, a lot of people consider Monster Hunter Potable Third to be the easiest Monster Hunter title. Some of them, even to this day, like easier than new gen games. And also Freedom 1. So it's funny because difficulty's always kind of like been back and forth in some form or fashion. And some of it goes down to progression difficulty. Back in DOS days where Gravios could roar and then he'd immediately follow up with a beam to smack you with it. And if you're not used to that happening to you in these games, like you go from new gen to that, well, that you're eating free damage and you have resource scarcity. So good luck with that. You're going to have to learn how to deal with that. There's all sorts of like little nuances, like even down to, are you setting yourself up for success? You brought up the term anecdote. Weapon changes across the series can mess people up.
Yep.
Like the very notion of playing a version of a weapon that would be easier to get into than another version of the weapon. Playing Gunlance in Wilds is infinitely easier to get into than playing Gunlance in like 4 or 4U.
Yep. And even in this test, is he using Fade Slash on Longsword? Like, we have no idea. I mean, I guess we can watch the recordings on like, okay, are you going to play Longsword the exact same way that you had to in
Well, it would be
Freedom
impossible
Unite?
because you only had backwards Fade Slash in Freedom Unite, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you
didn't even
sideways,
have left and
so
right
Are
Fade
you
Slash.
using that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So like you do arguably have an easier to play version of this weapon. And that's not necessarily the monsters or the game design as a whole. No, that's, you have more tools in your arsenal with this weapon. Or, even just simplification of a weapon. I ran through, we ran 140 GQs yesterday. And we were playing 140 Guild Quest Rajang. And this guy's a fucking menace. I make a great sword build. And the first fight that we did, we fought a regular G rank Furious Rajang. And then we immediately went to 140 GQ Rajang. And while, I wasn't the best greatsword player in the world, I held my ground and did some damage. And we were running a 2-man on some of the hardest content in Monster Hunter, and especially in 4U. And I was doing just fine, because the playstyle for Greatsword in 4U is very easy to play. If I had to sit there and I had to build up to a TCS combo, I probably would have gotten my ass whooped. no slinger burst, you know, just standard as TCS combo. And it is 140 Guild Quest Rajang harder, easier than Iceborne Rajang, because I would struggle more playing Greatsword against Iceborne Rajang than I would 140 GQ Rajang? Probably not. He's probably not harder. I would struggle more with Greatsword in a 2-man situation because I'm terrible with TCS style Greatsword. And if I weren't using Slinger Burst and I was fighting Iceborne Rajang, I would struggle more probably. And so like, just like, that was just one little window of how even like the weapon changes across the series can affect these things. Me, I play a lot of different weapons, and I like setting myself up for success. I don't like playing things that make me frustrated, which is why I don't progress with weapons that have skill taxes. I don't want to play with a shitty version of a weapon, you know, when I could play with the better version of it after going through the game faster and then making a build and end game for it. That's the way I would rather play. And so like,
yeah,
that's the reason why I play weapons like Insect Glaive. Wild's Gun Lance, funny enough, is the first time it ever didn't get completely skill taxed. You know, like you could actually just run it out the box. It scales with Raw now. You didn't have to run guard because of Perfect Guard. Like there was literally no skill tax for Gun Lance anymore. And one could be like, oh, well, that's just casualization. Well, not necessarily, because I could have just played another weapon that didn't require skill tax. You know, like there's 14 different weapons. You think moving from World to GU, I didn't like Insect Glaive because it was worse. You didn't have the pole vault, so I couldn't just skip like the pole vault air dash and everything, so I couldn't skip mechanics as easy. And also getting the bugs was ass. So what did I do? Adept Greatsword, you're my new best friend. Aerial Greatsword, I'm going to use you two sometimes too. I played with an easier version of a different weapon, a weapon that I classically don't enjoy, but just because I found it to set me up for success more than playing Insect Glaive. Now, does that mean that GU is just ball crushingly hard because I had to switch off of my weapon? No, it means that I found a different way to succeed in a more consistent manner that fits more with the way that I like to play. Some people, you know, they'll ride or die with their weapon. You know, they'll play like worse versions of their weapon no matter what, even if they're ass with them. That's not me, dude. You know, I don't want to like bang my head against the wall. I'm going to play something at my tip-top shape the way I feel comfortable with. And if I beat the content, I beat the content. Or if I lose, I lose. I'm not going to make myself lose on purpose just to, you know, have some kind of weird loyalty to a piece of code, you know?
And if you want to do that, that's fine. And there is something instructive to be gained from that. You know, someone like Monster Hunter, you know, just being predominantly switch axe, you know, obviously, and he's made some great videos, obviously talking about the different sort of iterations, how switch axes change, like with wilds, why it's maybe a little frustrating him to varying degrees. And there's obviously information and conclusions to be drawn from that. When you are you're predominantly focusing on one weapon. How are things changing between the games? What mechanics are evolving? What's getting worse? What's the play style like now? All that sort of thing. So there's definitely value in that. But like you say, I'm not just a one weapon sort of player. I play a ton of different stuff too, and styles make fights. Monsters offer many different puzzles that we all need to kind of figure out. And different weapons and their play styles are more suited for different puzzles. And yeah, and this is something that I talked about in the laggy video that maybe upset a few people, of my opinion that laggy on land in 4th gen, in Generations and GU, is actually quite a good fight. And that's a bit of a hot take, I think, possibly in the community, of like a lot of people getting frustrated about it having a lot of AoE, big sweeping hitboxes, lingering hitboxes, you know, the spinning orbs, the massive electric blasts on the floor, hyper laggy, and the stuff that it has as well.
I actually really like hyper jank laggy.
Yeah. My answer to all of that is find a different way of dealing with those mechanics then, because there are plenty of options, and especially with Generations and GU and in new gen and all the different tools now that folks have at their disposal. You got at double absolute, you've got different hunter arts, you've got different styles, you've got different weapons. If you're playing a weapon and you're getting cooked and you're having a difficult time with said monster and its certain mechanics, change it up. Learn a different way to have success, like you are exactly talking about. There are other ways of approaching these puzzles, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to say, hey, I'm getting cooked on a weapon that I know inside out. I need to change up my play style so that I can have more success against this particular matchup. So that's 100% an element of things, the different play styles of these weapons within their iterations across the series. And something as well, I didn't want to just forget to just bring this up. He made a good point early on that a lot of the difficult stuff in 4U is towards the end of the game. And just coming back to the video and what Braun is talking about, that has been a big shift since 4U, and perhaps 3rd gen to some degree with introducing talismans. But
Mazeron would argue that the progression in 3rd gen is lacking.
Yeah, I mean, it's started to become a thing where they have prioritized more challenging stuff towards the end of the game from 3rd and 4th gen onwards. And obviously that reflects, the folks that talk about the end game stuff and like, hey, does there need to be an end game? Because that has often come at the, in old gen, 1st and 2nd gen, and I guess a little bit in 3rd gen, the difficulty was more evenly distributed across the base progression because there was no end game, But that has obviously become more of a focus where, hey, we're going to offer a lot more challenging stuff towards the end, but the base progression is perhaps not going to be as ball-crushingly hard. So it's a trade-off, and I've obviously been more conditioned now to come in with those expectations of, I'm not pretending like new Monster Hunter titles are going to be like Freedom Unite, where there's no end game, but the base progression is going to be giving me that difficulty that I'm wanting at each step. It's a different experience now. And there's that whole conversation about, okay, which is maybe better or which is worse, having an end game with that challenging content or having the challenging content be more of a focus throughout the progression, But he commented about that, and I just wanted to bring that up because that is an important design change, and that can possibly explain a lot of what he is going to be talking about in this video, where the difficulty throughout the progression has been less of a focus because of in-game implementations.
Yeah, design philosophy and all that. And there could also be a lot of other, factors that come into play. But we'll see if he touches on them in the video. Let's continue forward.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about it.
Way to overcome the threat. Whereas in 4 Ultimate, every monster prior to the late 5-star quest may have well been in the same rank, because difficulty-wise, they're all the same. Nothing is more difficult than the next.
I have to disagree there, man. Tetsukabra is definitely a jump compared to Jaggy and Celtis and like the little jobbers, dude. Also, it is weird because Tetsukabra I would consider harder than like Gypceros and a lot of the other monsters that come after him too. So
right,
maybe he's just the low rank Anjanath. But
that's
yeah,
fair.
I just say I disagree with that sentiment. I mean, maybe that's just his personal anecdotal things. Of course, I can't say he's a liar, but I personally disagree with that point.
I think I'm on board with you there. I mean, Tetsu definitely. I mean, it could just be an isolated case, but even if it is, I mean, it's still pretty challenging fight at the start of, as one of like the starter monsters. I think it's the 3rd.
He's like 3rd or 4th. Yeah, or he's like required wise, he's like 3rd or 4th or something. But you can find him like after a lot of like a lot of the raptors, stuff like that. But
yeah, because Jaggy you only fight in hub.
But you fight Great Jaggy.
Oh no, you start to get it.
Village.
You start to get it at Village. Yeah, I remember. It's just not initially available. That's right.
I don't think he's a key quest either. I think he's just a optional. Tetsu also has like a full body tackle that comes out super faster than anything in New Gen low rank. Like full body tackles. In fact, you know what? Actually, it kind of reminds me of Guardian Fulgur Anjanath's full body tackle, except Tetsukabra's wider and his entire body's a hitbox, and he does it, and he can do it twice in a row. So like, to put that into perspective, that's what I'm mostly like talking about. And then his Rock Crush has kind of like a misleading hitbox that can hit you without you like really knowing where the hitbox is until you learn it. So like there's just a couple things that make Tetsukabra uniquely more challenging than the previous fights, and then a couple of the later ones as well. But there's
even like a couple of isolated cases, like Nursilla, for example. Like you don't have access to good sharpness at that point in the game, and it's Bounce City.
Claw Bounce, yeah.
Like, yeah, most of Nursilla's body, if you're not using certain weapons like, Hammer, L3 Charge, or whatever. So there's a lot of things like that are set up in 4U, specifically that, I think are a little bit present a pretty good amount of like challenge for where you're at in the early stages of the game, and other things as well. Certain fights obviously could be, quite a challenge for certain weapons and things like that.
You can definitely see where like certain monsters can be a funny matchup. Like even low rank Gravios, like you fight Gravios on low rank, and most of the time you're only gonna have green sharpness at the point that you fight him too. That's funny. But yeah, continuing on.
They just fall at your sword and you never grow. All these points can be demonstrated in a single hunt, the flagship hunts. All the hunts I did for the video were done on the same day. I took 5 hunts for each flagship, Tigrex for Monster Hunter Freedom 2, and
so here's
Gore
the flagship
for Monster
test.
Hunter 4. Of the Gore Magala hunts, I failed 1 hunt and won the other 4, all with a completion time of less than 15 minutes. Of the Tigrex hunts, I failed 4 and only won 1, with a completion time of 26 minutes. But Gore made you fail. You just disproved your whole argument, I hear you say. If I had much experience fighting him prior to this, then I would agree. But this experiment was the first time I hunted him solo with no cat.
Oh shit, hold on,
This disproved your whole argument, I hear you say. If I had much experience fighting
that was pretty sizable.
him prior to this, then I would agree. But this experiment was the first time I hunted him solo with no cats. I fought him in the hub with friends, and the story fights were all with cats. Including the 4 wins I got making these videos, I've only beaten a total of 7 Gore Magalas. Contrast that with Tigrex from Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. Throughout that game, I've successfully hunted a total of 34 Tigrex. One of those is the Tigrex from the final village quest, Monster Hunter. Even with experience with all those hunts, I got destroyed fighting him for this video. Tigrex was not intended to be faced with such pitiful equipment in that initial urgent hunt. The sheer power and ferocity he expresses is frightening. The whole time I literally could not allow myself to have less than full health, or he could kill me in the whole urgent video. Hunter. Tigrex was not intended to be faced with such pitiful equipment.
So he hit him with a charge. It did comparable damage to Gore's slam, but that charge is definitely not like a super attack. I think he's kind of embellishing it a little bit.
It's a lot harder to avoid.
Yeah, it's a bit harder
to avoid that charge than Gore slam.
So like it also like goes into the play of, is Tigrex a later fight than Gore? Like I did a little bit of looking into both of these quests, or not these quests specifically, but both of them are like 4 out of so many stars urgent quest. But Gore is also designed for you to have to fight him a couple times across HR4. So he's not just like, oh, HR5 monster or 5-star monster. No, he's like a 4-star monster, and then you also fight him at the end of it to unlock it for a 5-star. And so it's really weird, the design of it overall. And so like, are they fought around the same time? If so, then the keeping the defense the same, then that kind of weighs the test in neither of their favor. But if Tigrex is designed for like later on in the village compared to how Gore is designed, that would be weighed in Tigrex's favor. You know, like little tiny details like that are why like 1-to-1s are not super. I mean, I've beat this to death by now, but also the notion of he patted out like he was like, it's only my 7th time killing Gore, and I also never fought him without friends or with cats. And it's like, sure, cool, but that doesn't all of a sudden change how the monster's moveset works. And it doesn't take like 50 million tries to understand how a monster moves. In fact, if that were the case, then I would be a guru for doing a similar funny challenge run against Alatreon for my 8th kill on him by not running augments, not running element, not running there was so much stuff I didn't run. I didn't run augments, I didn't run element, and the augments, that includes defense augment, by the way. Defense augment, health augment, all that stuff. I didn't have a fully upgraded charm. And I also didn't run any RNG decos in the game, where RNG decos is how you fill out and make your builds. So like literally I was running a funny challenge run and I pretty comfortably beat Alatreon. I had to embellish how hard it was. Well, I didn't even make it sound super hard in the actual video, but I definitely didn't make it sound like it was a cakewalk. But am I some kind of Monster Hunter guru for beating this, what would be deemed a hard master rank level challenge, and with challenge run parameters for only my 7th kill after taking 2 years off, or yeah, a bit more than that off playing World Iceborne? Oh, maybe Alatreon's just too easy, right? You know? So like there's...
And we don't know his experience. I mean, this video was made 2 years ago. I mean, obviously, Gore has been in a number of games since 4U that he possibly could have played. So,
true.
Yes, the number
that
he's fought, you know, in 4U might be 7, but we have no idea, you know, if he's fought it in newer games or had experience with that, or because that's the thing. I mean, each of the monsters change, like you say, across the iterations. So if he's fought, you know, Gore in GU, he got to the end of 4 Ultimate and he fought 140 Gore, he fought Gore in Sunbreak, or whatever it may be. You know, obviously the base implementation where Gore's placement within the roster of 4 Ultimate puts it as a mid-tier fight after fighting it in a number of other iterations where it was a more, you know, a higher tier encounter. Yeah, there's something to be said about that as well. So we have no idea.
I mean, even like just talking about that, G rank Gore in 4U has a guaranteed wind stun true combo where he can hit you with a ball right after he wind stuns you, and you can't do anything about it if you get wind stunned or winded. So it's, or wind pressured. I keep saying different things.
Yeah.
But like little things like that. Sunbreak Gore doesn't have that, but I still find Sunbreak Gore to be a bit more tantalizing. But at the same time, Sunbreak Gore doesn't have a true combo in a game that has resource scarcity. You know? So which one's
and like
harder?
You've already said, like you've already said, Shagaru exists as the higher tier encounter, and chaotic. Chaotic is in 4 Ultimate. So we're talking about the base iteration of a monster that has 3 basically variations within this game. You know, Tigrex as well in 4 Ultimate has Brute Tigrex, has Molten Tigrex. You know, there's like so many iterations of things, and it's like, yeah, Tigrex and its placement within that specific game is, you know, maybe it's not at an equivalent sort of tier within that game as
even Molten
in 4 Ultimate.
Because even Molten is like in high rank is a menace, like an actual menace to society. So it's like there's all sorts of different layers to it. Gore is the flagship, sure, but he's the flagship in the way of building up towards Shagaru. You know, like he's not actually the forefront part of the game. Whereas like
And it's important to say, this is 4 Ultimate. Seregios is the flagship. If we're talking about MH4...
Well, to be fair, he
I've
is
not
talking
played
about
MH4.
Freedom 2 versus MH4 progression.
Right. Well, this is the thing. He might not have played MH4, and I was listening to Alpha talk about MH4. We can't just assume that, a lot of the stuff is the same in 4U that it is in 4. I've not played it. It's in Japanese, obviously. Never came to Western markets. But what is gore like in MH4?
Well,
Maybe
the major
that is a
difference
different
is you don't have
experience.
lay down, get up, delay. You don't have a
you
get
don't
up
have
delay.
that. Yep. Exactly.
So it's
a lot of different things.
Yeah, that would definitely increase the amount of challenge you would see. However, even then, 4 still wasn't considered a very difficult game by any means. In fact, 4G is actually the one that got review bombed because of how difficult the G rank and everything ended up being compared to everything else. And that's a funny story for another day. But you're totally right in that, he might be comparing Freedom to Tigrex that plays a similar role as Gore, but he's not actually experiencing the Gore fight the way that it was initially brought out with no laydown delay. And laydown delay, people sleep on it. It's huge. Super fucking important.
It's huge.
Super huge.
Yep.
So you're totally right on that. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Okay.
Just something to think about, just as I've not played it, so I can't say for sure, but it's just, it's just ideas of like, hey, what are the legitimacies of certain things that we're testing? We don't know for sure, but he's doing a good job. And I just want to say again, it's so hard to evaluate this stuff. Props to him for, coming in and even, like you say, doing this stuff and making it, having a red hot go.
True. Yeah.
Drawing a conclusion here. So nothing to take away from what he's doing, but also, questions about different things and different elements of looking at these two.
True. Yeah. There's definitely something respectable about putting yourself out there like this, and even trying to quantify it in some form or fashion, even if the tests aren't perfect.
100%.
Anyone can raise their nose at shit like this, but from what I know, most people would never even bother to put in the effort to even try to do something like this. So kudos in that.
In that initial urgent hunt, the sheer power and ferocity he expresses is frightening. The whole time I literally could not allow myself to have less than full health, or he could kill me in a single combo. The adrenaline, the stress was intoxicating. I could feel my heartbeat in my chest. I was utterly and entirely outmatched. When facing Gore Magala, it was night and day. As you'll see in the videos playing, he had put me on the back foot a few times, but as a whole, he was just so non-threatening that I never once needed to keep my health full. A few times, I could even continue the assault, even with my health dangerously low, at levels I would never have allowed fighting literally anything from Freedom Unite with that weak of equipment.
And part of that is delay get up, like feeling more comfortable fighting things at lower health, because you can in fact delay that get up to ensure that you're not hit by the secondary part of a combo. So,
and as well, like Gore's inherent design in 4, there's something to be said about that too. And I just want to bring that up of, Gore and its like ecology thing actually kind of plays into its gameplay of like, hey, it's blind, it's a bit slow when it doesn't have its antennas out, it doesn't really know where you are, like its movement, a lot about it is not designed to be this balls to the wall experience like Tigrex is, for example, as like this menacing, aggressive monster. So it changes obviously with that dynamic of when it has its antennas out, and then it becomes a bit more threatening. But it's a completely different design as far as a monster is concerned, and that has been a lot of discussion about Gore in Wilds, with what was originally a pretty mid-tier fight, and it getting more aggressive for that portion of the fight when it has its antennas out, and Wilds obviously having Gore as a much more menacing encounter at a baseline, and it becomes a lot faster at the baseline. It has a lot more moves that were once a lot more threatening stuff that it once had tied to its antennas, now being at a baseline when it's just in its normal form. So something to be said about that too. You know, Gore is a completely different design and a different puzzle to figure out. So
Yeah, it's all design philosophy, intricacies, just differences. Yeah.
Looking at one of the first armors you can craft in either game, this becomes evident. We're going to look at the Velociprey armor from Freedom Unite and for Ultimate. Both armors are
we
rarity
go.
2. Both give you either negate stun or half stun, Freedom Unite and for Ultimate respectively. However, the most interesting thing to me is that in Freedom Unite, the armor has 35 more defense, putting it at 100 for the set, than the one from 4 Ultimate, sitting at 65 for the set.
Which actually kind of makes sense considering how the damage models work.
Yep.
You're coded to take more damage in general in second gen for the most part. The damage formula is different. So that is interesting that Freedom Unite's same armor set does have more defense because that actually lines up design-wise to a certain degree. That is...
But I'm interested to see what he says here.
Yeah. Of course, that is insinuating that they intentionally, did that, which Monster Hunter devs typically don't intentionally fine-tune everything perfect. We'll see.
The devs gutted the monsters in this game so much at the start that they even nerfed the equipment you can craft because they knew you weren't going to need it. And they were right.
Okay. The damage formula is different. So they didn't nerf the equipment like that. It's just different. That's so funny.
I mean, they just dialed down the value of it. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Yeah, that's like saying Wild's Hope Armor has Divine Blessing on it because the game was meant to be harder than the other new gen titles. The devs knew that you would be getting balled on, so they give you Divine Blessing on the Hope Armor. Like that's okay. Let's go.
You don't need it.
Yeah.
Not only is 65 defense more than enough, but it's also just the initial defense, meaning you can upgrade that set to have a staggering 585 defense. You can literally use this set, if you want to, all the way into G rank.
That's a design philosophy intricacy. You can put those armor spheres to use. It's actually something I really like about 4U. Low rank armor pieces can be used even into G rank, and it gives you more of a reason to use different armor spheres. That's...
Well, and less of a reason to keep farming, farming stuff through the progression. It's that whole design shift of like, hey, if you want to build one set and go as far as you can with it, you can keep on trucking with it, and you can tailor the difficulty, tailor the experience. It's like, okay, you don't have to use your armor spheres if you don't want to.
Well, like even then, like the bringing up max defense is a moot point because it's not like the defense isn't brought out in thresholds anyways. You're not going to be completing 2-star caravan and getting hard armor spheres. Like you get them at specific thresholds as they go, and they always stay behind what you can craft monster wise. So like I was running Tetsukabra pieces in my most recent run, but when I made a Gravios armor piece, despite having to use the same types of armor spheres, the defense on the Gravios armor was higher than the defense on the Tetsukabra armor. So like,
exactly.
It's not just, there's no reason to bring up max defense. It's not like you're rocking 310 max defense or 585 max defense just in low rank. That's a weird point.
Let's look at the Freedom Unite armor. It starts with a base defense of 100 and maxes out at a whopping 310. Except, not only will you need all those defense points, but by design, that set will be obsolete by the next large monster. The reason being is that in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, armor spheres are hard to come by early in the game. Personally, I felt the armor spheres I needed were hard to get throughout the entire game. In Freedom Unite, it was easier and faster just to make a new set than to try to upgrade yours, and it seemed like you never had enough defense, which taught you how to avoid damage, to play cautiously, to pay attention to what the monster's doing, all the things at the start of 4U don't really teach you at all, especially if you do make an initial set. You'll never have to make anything else. Before reaching Gormagala and 4 Ultimate, there were already armor pieces that had half my total defense on a single piece. Monsters were helpless when I had 41 defense, and I kept myself at 41 defense just so I could feel any threat at all. Why on earth would I need 100
Something
defense?
that I will say about that is what he just said about armor sets being made obsolete at the next monster. I don't think, like in 2nd gen, I guess, I don't really think that is. I mean, if we're talking about defense here, but we're not talking about armor skills. So, at least for me, I put the most of my focus on, hey, what does this set offer me in terms of skills? The defense is one thing, but if there's a lower tier of armor that maybe has less defense but has skills that I think are more appealing, or a bit more viable, or cater towards like a weapon that I'm playing or something like that. Obviously Velociprey armor in 4U is very good starter armor, but that's the thing, is like, we're not talking about it from a defense standpoint. We're talking about it from what skills does it offer, because I think that's mostly how people approach set building, and that's how they approach the progression of like, okay, what's like a fairly starting sort of gear set that I can make that's going to give me like some offensive skills, maybe a couple of utility skills like stun, resist, or something like that. And I think that's still the case in 2nd gen games. Like, that's probably the case in every Monster Hunter game, where there's other options that have less defense but are more viable or more enticing in terms of skills, So it's probably I don't think that's entirely how people approach these games. They're going to look for what is going to offer them skills, use it for as long as they can, and then try to look at like, okay, what's now going to give me, yes, I'm going to look for more defense, but what are the skills that I'm needing for this weapon or the build that I'm trying to play? And that's still the case, I feel like. I don't think most folks are just trying to get their defense as high as they can. I think most people are trying to look for skills as well, and that is still a consistent thing across most of the games.
I would say, for fairness towards Braun, reverse engineering this and playing devil's advocate, the argument could be made that 4U doesn't really have scarcity with armor spheres. So you can get a lot more mileage out of a lesser armor piece that will give you like skill that you may potentially want. Yeah, and so fair. Like there's much more reason why you could carry something further, especially with not just how generous the armor spheres are, but like even like the back to the max defense thing, like they are designed to carry, like be worn further into the game. I think that's like a design choice that the devs like intentionally wanted to go with. Meanwhile, he mentioned armor sphere scarcity. It's actually harder to get it than possibly to even make new monster parts or new monster armors. So it would, if you're looking for survivability, if you're looking for all these different things, and you're trying to get ahead of the game because monsters do hit harder, it might be best just to make new armor pieces as you go, as opposed to trying to make a specific early game set work. And so from a survivability standpoint, I would say that's the main thing he's arguing, in which case like that is a strong case. I don't know if he has not like eloquently putting all these points down. He's not laying them bare.
He's doing his best. He's trying.
Yeah, but
he's doing his best.
Like just from what he's gathered and put down, I was able to pick that up, and one could say that's an extremely fair point, like the fact that you do have the luxury of worrying about being able to run attack up medium in low rank rather than having to worry as much about defense maybe is a point in his favor, in that, hey, defense mattered more and it was harder to get it. So it's like, one could say that that's something you could agree with. It's another aspect of like design philosophy curves. The difficulty curve of 2nd gen and 1st gen, a lot of it being known for preparation, gathering. there are ways to trivialize the game, but getting to those points is harder than something like mounting. You know, you can trivialize the game with flash bugs, but getting the flash bugs is harder than the ledge slop maps in 4U letting you, you know, jump off of everything and get maps. But then again, conversely, the ledge slop maps in 4U make map navigation and arena navigation harder than the flat maps. Because there are more cases where you can get your iframes literally snatched away from you due to being stuck in animation locks. Especially like if you accidentally walk off of a ledge backwards or something because you've got your camera trained on the monster. So like there's different things that can come into play here. But I'll give a point to Braun for being able to raise that, you know, that kind of argument up, because
I get what he's saying.
Yeah, because there is something to be said about, hey, due to the scarcity of these things, it is something you have to be more mindful of, you know, when build making. And that's something that I found I can agree. I didn't have to worry as much about builds and going through progression. I haven't played Freedom Unite yet. I'm going to try to play it the way that I've played all the other ones. And who knows, maybe that might be the game that finally stops me, you know? We'll see. We'll see.
For anything, had I made a set with 100 defense, all of the small amount of thrill I got out of those monsters would have evaporated. However, in Freedom Unite, every point matters from the beginning of low rank to the end of G rank. You'll soon see why. I want to analyze some data from the hunts I recorded to kind of illustrate the difference between the monsters of Freedom Unite with the monsters of 4 Ultimate. In the hunts against Tigrix, he hit me an average of 5 times per feint. The breakdown of each hunt can be found by their respective videos. In the hunts against Gormagala, he hit me an average of 7 times per feint. Out of the hunts, Tigrix made me feint 14 times, resulting in the 4 losses. Gormagala made me feint only 8 times, resulting in 1 loss, 1 win with 2 feints, and 3 wins with 1 feint. As you can see here, Tigrix with equal defense.
Okay, so 14 feints versus 8. It's not too much of a difference, to be honest. Right. It sounds like you struggle either way. And like, I like how he gathered a lot of data. It would have been better if he gathered the same amount of data, like attacks wise, and like maybe had an equal amount of feints between the two. I get that he probably didn't want to run like multiple tests like that because they're kind of redundant, but it does matter, especially like considering how variations of chip damage and things like that. I mean, look at that. Like he's dying in 3 hits, dying in 3 hits, dying in 6, dying in 8, dying in 2, and like, okay, he's got the lower numbers out of the gore hunt, but he also has one where he died in 17 hits. So he's like, okay, so he literally didn't.
He healed a lot or whatever.
Or I think this is like from full health bar potentially. I'm not sure.
Surely not. There's no. He would have been playing normally and healing, and then just seeing, okay, how many times did I get hit before I fainted with heals taken into account? I'm assuming that is what is going on here.
Oh, if that's the case, this is even worse of a test. This actually doesn't prove anything.
I haven't been looking at these recordings in depth. I've been trying to get my thoughts under control.
No.
I think he's been healing.
And yeah, he has been healing. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well, then okay, yeah, this test doesn't actually prove anything. If it's the scenario where if this is the scenario where he's like, this is how many hits it took before I got taken out, that's just showing you getting like snuffed out before, you know, you got hit during a heal or something. Whenever you could have easily just zoned. He's fighting on a map where that you can zone. You know, like there's no excuse. Really? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's just to show that the damage values are higher, you know? And I get that. I mean, that's the whole
no. Like theoretically, like this test would
part,
only prove like that the monsters are able to punish heals faster or like something like that. But if that's the case, that's purely like a skill thing. That's like a skill check, not a actual like quantifiable numbers thing.
Right, yeah.
So like because like the only thing this would prove is that he's better at fighting and successfully healing against gore on average more than he is against Tigrex.
Right.
That's the only thing this proves.
Yes.
In fact, in Feint 2 of the Gore Hunt 3, he dies in 3 hits. And the lowest one for Tigrex is 2. And that only happens once. So it's like, even like from a damage comparison, that looks like if he just didn't get any heals off and he just got comboed or something. Even from a damage perspective, that shows there's not as much of a gap between these two hunts, despite the defense weirdness and the damage formula.
Yes.
So it's like this, quite literally, this test is just not, it's not
flawed.
saying anything. it's really not saying anything.
Yeah.
Like, it really wouldn't be productive to pick at it any further, but yeah, this test isn't really saying anything, Braun. It just shows that you're better.
I understand it. I get it, but yeah, like you say, it is instructive for a number of other things aside from just, okay, we're making a point about the damage being higher and Tigrex being able to cut you from like a higher health range, you know? But like you say, there's a ton of other things that factor in here. It's like, okay, what are the opportunities to heal?
Yeah. Like data is data, but not all data is useful. You know?
Right, yeah.
So like, yeah. Okay, we'll continue.
What's much more effective at killing me than Gore? Regardless of his speed and aggression, Gore just couldn't put me down as easily as his Freedom Unite flagship counterpart. There's no better evidence to this fact than the damage formulas for these games themselves. Starting with 3rd gen, verifiably starting with Portable 3rd, and confirmed through experimentation in 3 Ultimate, Monster Hunter started using a different damage formula for monsters. Both formulas are present on screen now. Let's break down the formula real quick. Attack modifier, quest attack percentage. Example, 5-star absolute power quest has an attack modifier of 115%, or 1.15. Attack power, the attack power of the attack. Example, Tigrex Bite has an attack power of 30. Elemental resistance, the resistance to the element that the attack consists of. Example, all Tigrex's attack in Freedom Unite are Dragon Element. Dragon Element resistance would go here. Rage, the Rage modifier. For Tigrex, it would be 1.5. Defense, your Hunter's defense. For this example, it's 100. All damage calculations are rounded down to the nearest integer, meaning you drop the decimals. Due to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate not having any public information regarding the attack modifiers of quests and the attack power of the monsters, from here on out in the formulas for Gore Magala, I will be estimating the attack modifier and attack power entries as I had to reverse engineer the base strength of Gore Magala's attacks.
So real quick for those watching at home, he's right. There is a different type of formula. I'm not an expert on this subject matter, so I can't give credence on like how the old formula and new formula and like doing all the math and everything. He's mentioning quest modifiers and things like that. So just to put it into perspective, if you are coming from like new gen and you don't really understand this, every quest has different types of modifiers, and you could almost think of it as like how tempered monsters have a different damage modifier than regular monsters. Except back in the day, they didn't have like superpower states and things like that. So you had have quest modifiers that were specific. So like if you were fighting an event version of Tigrex, for example, that was made to be harder, it would have a different attack modifier that would increase its base attack, as well as potentially like damage resistance modifiers alongside hit zone values. So that way it would increase their health in a roundabout manner. It's a lot of complex math stuff. Basically, it was a way that they could fine tune how much punishment a monster could take from specific weapon types, and also how much damage it could do on a per quest basis. And we do have a little bit of that in New Gen. For example, if you were around in the base world era and you fought the Golden Pickle Joe, the Golden Devil Joe, that was a specific tempered Devil Joe that actually had arch-tempered damage modifiers. So like it had basically a similar equivalent to damage increase that arch-tempered Elder Dragons had. versus their counterparts. And so that was like an example of a quest specific thing. So, it's not just like superpowered states are the only way for them to increase damage and things like that. They also did quest specific things. Now he's getting into like the nitty gritty of a lot of like math and everything. I'm just going to give you the TLDR. Second gen monsters do on average hit harder. They're just designed that way. The formula is different. He does mention that it really started to change during Portable Third. That is whenever you start seeing the biggest change in how damage works. Monster Hunter Tri oftentimes is lumped in with the like bridge era of Monster Hunter, which you could say is Monster Hunter like Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter Tri, and that's where like you begin to see a transition away from the really, really different inventory management style Monster Hunter that it was, with some other like intricacies involved in terms of gathering and stuff. And we see it developing into what would become third gen. And third gen, like starting with like Portable Third and 3U and everything, that would set the groundwork to how Monster Hunter even works to this day in a lot of ways. So we are looking at different eras of Monster Hunter with different design choices, and it is intentional.
The new formula allows defense to absorb more and more damage the higher it is than defense in anything preceding the third generation. Meaning, with a defense of 100 in Freedom Unite, you would take 31 hit points of damage from an enraged Tigrex bite. But with a new formula, all things the same, you would only take 23 damage. Decrease that defense to 41. In Freedom Unite, you would take 41 hit points of damage from an enraged Tigrex bite, but you would only take 34 damage with the new formula. That's a 26% reduction point for point at 100 defense, and a 17% reduction point for point at 41 defense. The disparity continues to grow from there as defense increases. How can this be? Well, it's pretty simple, really. By changing the fixed variable from 160 to 80, they have essentially doubled the effectiveness of each defense point for every game following Freedom Unite. Meaning to equal 200 defense in 4 Ultimate, you'd have to have 400 defense in Freedom Unite. Now do you see why they thought it was just fine to nerf the Velociprey armor, among others? The 4U Velociprey set starts with an effective defense of 130 and caps out at a ridiculous 1160 defense by Freedom Unite standards.
So it wasn't just nerfing because they felt like it would be a cakewalk. No, they nerfed it because they changed the formula and are now designing around it. Okay, Ron, you got to make up your mind, buddy. You got to make up your mind on this one.
A low-rank Velociprey set will offer you more defense capabilities in its lifetime than can ever be achieved legitimately in Freedom Unite. All that basically means is that fundamentally nothing from low to G rank will ever hit as hard as monsters from Freedom Unite in prior, with the exception of the most extreme guild quests and late-game monsters. What's even more
which feeds back into that whole thing about the funnel of the hardest challenges being laid low into event quests and guild quests and things to that nature, or just the upper tier stuff. I know for a fact things like Shah Dalamadur in G rank 4U they have a true one shot, which isn't something that's very common in Monster Hunter, like for the past decade. So, or even just in general for a long time, Mazeron criticizes third gen for not having one shots, despite Fatalis being just a regular story boss and everything, or hub boss, and having one shots. So, this is something that it's not just one-to-one. This applies everywhere on a regular basis. Shah Dalamadur is one-shotting you with a bite attack, in G rank, and that's not even event Shah. That's regular Shah Dalamadur. That's just one example.
Right. Is Shah? I can't even remember if Shah is a normal G rank quest. I think it's normal Dalamadur that's event only, and I think that has its own.
Yeah, normal Dalamadur is event only, and Shah Dalamadur also has an event as well.
Right.
But the only one I've fought out of Shah is the normal so far. We actually fought them together for that bounding Dalamadur. Yeah.
Exactly. That was a good experience running those stuff, and then seeing what that was kind of. I don't know if we got hit with those one shots.
I got hit with one. I got hit with one. I think Pedro got hit by one too. I can't remember. I definitely got hit by one.
Yeah, I get what he's trying to say here, but it's like, this is the whole crux of this, this video and what he's expecting and what he's disappointed from. It's like, he's acknowledging that the difficulty stuff that he is wanting is still there. It's just towards the end of the game more, as opposed to sprinkled more evenly throughout the progression. And it's like, yeah, if you want to make that claim, that's fine. If your priority is the base progression and you want that challenge sprinkled throughout that's fine. And I know what he's acknowledging, that the challenge is still it's there it's just at the end of the game now. So it's like, okay, are you going to be you're disappointed about that, but the game is still offering that. It's just at a different point within the game. So
yeah, well, that's the sentiment that's being echoed to this day about like different game iterations now. But yeah, definitely, like, there is some form of intentional withholding of content potentially. That could be a pinnacle challenge, but here that doesn't necessarily apply, because Braun has admitted to like some of the pinnacle challenge stuff. It's just a matter of
exactly
the low rank progression loop and high rank progression loop that he's frowning on. And
yes.
Different people have different goalposts, of what they're gonna like, especially if they come from a different feeling, of Monster Hunter. If you came from the older gens, you're gonna feel something, different a little more, which is exactly what the last video was about. Mazeron. Now we got Sparrow and Braun. There's all sorts of different things where they move the goalpost a little bit, or they shift how design philosophies changed. And some people are going to catch it more than others. And there is value in what they have to say. Sometimes some things change for the better. Sometimes some things change for the worse. Sometimes things change and it's just different. And right now we're looking at someone who sees a different change and they're not liking it as much. But MH and I, him and I just went through fighting 140 GQs. That shit's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Fucking 140 Zenogre, 140 Diablos, and like some of it's hard for the wrong reasons, like Y stones. But even like
yes,
Zenogre,
if that was removed.
Yeah, even if that was removed, 140 GQ Zenogre with like his apex state changes would still be fucking a hard fight. I find his moveset more difficult to deal with than Thunderlords, and Thunderlords, I have Adept and Valor and stuff I can use too. So like there's all sorts of funny little nuances. And the event quest and everything, there's even more challenge, like even with the post-launch content. Yeah, it's post-launch content, but it's still there and it's still hard. So like there's oodles and oodles to go around. And this video was made 2 years ago, so he had access to those event quests too.
I wonder if it's interesting us looking at this now, obviously, with when this video was made. Let me frame it this way, right? He is disappointed that the base progression is not offering the difficulty that was established prior, and that it is now being offered more towards the end of the game. And if that's his gripe, I understand it. I don't agree, but I understand it. Imagine if we framed it now, where this conversation was happening with a newer gen title, where that is still the case, but also the pinnacle content is not at the same level. So he couldn't even acknowledge, but for as what I've said from his perspective, all that I've said about the base progression, there's still guild quests there presenting that. You wouldn't be able to make that claim as strongly with these newer titles that are leaving out event quests on launch, dialing down pinnacle content so that they can bring it out later, those sorts of changes. So that's kind of all I wanted to say, is like, hey, if you wanted to make more of a basis for being disappointed across the breadth of the game because both of those buckets have been brought down, the end game and the base progression, I think you would have a much stronger case talking about that. that's kind of what I wanted to explain. It's a bit complicated. I'm trying to explain as best I can.
No. It's definitely different eras of Monster Hunter have different, nuances and things like that. New Gen sadly has the post-launch incentivization to come back because we want you to log in MMO style all the time, come back and be exposed to our microtransactions longer style. And
Yep.
I'm not a big fan of that.
That he is making, he wouldn't even be able to say that.
Yeah,
with
he
New
wouldn't.
Gen.
He wouldn't be able to even say
I'm
that about New
disappointed.
Gen.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that the most of the the progression of the game is easier. But yeah, I still acknowledge that guild quests and that sort of stuff is still there for that challenge that I'm seeking. He wouldn't even be able to say that for the majority of New Gen stuff, right? Aside from isolated cases, obviously, where 7-star gore, 8-star tempered arcveld. I don't agree with that, but yeah, he wouldn't even be able to make that claim with New Gen. So imagine if he made something like this video talking about one of those newer titles,
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
and it's not like we're moving the goalpost right here. We're just trying to reframe the discussion in a manner that may be applicable to like fans that started with New Gen, trying to get an understanding of, what exactly these guys are yapping on about. Because the fact of the matter is, Braun isn't even discussing this from a launch perspective. We've kind of just taken it there.
Yep.
Braun hasn't mentioned it yet,
MH4,
but there are event quests that are just as hard, if not harder, than guild quests in some ways. So, he hasn't brought it up, but he doesn't have to hit like every single point perfectly, or like talk about every single counterpoint. All right.
Sad is that I ran the numbers for the set that I beat the final Freedom Unite Village quest with an attack modifier of 4, and the damage that Tigrex does with an enraged charge is the same damage that the low rank one does in absolute power when you have 41 defense. In a set with 595 defense and -8 dragon resistance, G rank equipment, the enraged charge from that Tigrex does 87 damage. The absolute power Tigrex also does 87 damage to a hunter with 41 defense. The difference being, by the time you get to the final village quest in Freedom Unite, you will have learned how to deal with the monsters presented by that point. What does that same souped up Tigrex, all being equal, do in 4 Ultimate? 49 damage. A whopping 44% less than you would take with equal stats in Freedom Unite. Remember when I said every point in Freedom Unite matters? That's why. To prove this point, let's look at the G-Rank hub quests for Tigrex in Freedom Unite and Generations Ultimate. Attack modifiers are not available for 4U quests as of now. In the G3 Freedom Unite quest Absolute Power, Tigrex has an attack modifier of 3.6. Giving ourselves 500 defense, and Enraged Charge deals 83 hit points of damage. In the G4 GU quest Tracing the Family Tree, Tigrex has an attack multiplier of 6.2. Giving ourselves 500 defense, and Enraged Charge deals 82 hit points of damage. Even with a quest modifier that is 72% greater than the Freedom Unite quest, the Tigrex in Generations Ultimate still can't outdamage the Tigrex in Freedom Unite. Hold up, are you really belly aching over 1 point of damage?
Oh man, that kind of leaves more questions than answers, because it's like, is the higher attack modifier, is that because it's an event quest? I didn't hear him talk about that. If it's not, and it's just straight up G rank Tigrex versus G rank Tigrex, then that's just 1 point of damage. It's more like groundwork because they're having to deal with different formulas, but they got near the same result. Well, he's about to clarify here. He's doing this little Phoenix Wright bit. Hold on.
Hold up. Are you really belly aching over 1 point of damage? Seriously, bruh, who hurt you? Okay, fair point. That does seem insignificant on its face. However, you have to consider that 500 defense in Generations Ultimate is typically seen as the minimum you should have, as in G1 defense. By the time you reach the G4 Tigrex, your defense in all likelihood will be significantly more. Most Blade Masters ends up rocking the Cyanotard GX or the Glavenus X. Those sets have an initial defense of 590 and 610 respectively, and they both max out at 800. Although we all know what everyone ends up with, the Nasset armor. Atolka's set.
Okay, the Nasset armor, this is an odd point, and it's all about GU anyways. I'm more interested in the before point. The initial defense being higher, because he's right. Those lower sets are actually higher, pretty good defense. They're over 500, and Tigrex is a higher G quest, not G1. Or yeah, because you can make a Sienna GX in G1. That is an interesting point. Sadly, we don't see the comparison to 4U exactly, but that is an interesting point from Freedom Unite to GU. I'll give Braun some point on that.
Yeah, the question is what equivalence do we have to Freedom Unite? Obviously, I've played a decent amount of Freedom Unite, but not enough to speak on things definitively. My question is, okay, what similar Blade Master sets were folks using by that similar point of encountering Tigrex and, Hub?
Yeah.
So we don't, if he doesn't show that, it is what it is. But I mean, hey, if what he was using 500 defense as the number or whatever, I mean, what equivalent armors were folks using that were Blade Master sets that were common, and how much defense did those have? That would be good to know,
Yeah. We'll see what else he's cooking.
So let's compare a fully upgraded final boss set for both Freedom Unite and Generations Ultimate. The Yukanlo set in Freedom Unite maxes out at 580 defense. The Atolka set in Generations Ultimate maxes out at 860. With these numbers, the Freedom Unite Tigrex would do 74 damage. The Generations Ultimate Tigrex would only do 50. To give an even greater perspective.
Okay, so one of my biggest issues with this is that this is arguing from a standpoint that isn't taking into account the more powerful versions of fights. Tigrex is not the sole equivalent to like a previous Tigrex that doesn't have a like superpowered state. Hyper Tigrex would be like more of an applicable version. Like you want to pit like the strongest version of versus the strongest version.
That far.
Or in this case as well, like Frenzy Tigrex. What about Guild Quest Tigrex? I don't think there's a Guild Quest Tigrex. Well, a monster that has a Guild Quest.
It's Apex.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like Apex Tigrex. So like, that's one flaw that I'm seeing with this. Because like, sure, you could nickel and dime like event quest modifiers, but he's talking about just sheer base versions. One could say, yeah, that's kind of telling for the base version to be doing less damage potentially versus the other base version. But that isn't taking into account that there are other levels of progression and difficulty that they're having to balance around as well. And, as we stated earlier in the video, different monsters get different roles across the series. They don't operate the same exact way. They get moves changed, they get HP changed, they get damage changed, they get behaviors changed. Like there's different elements to these different monsters. So I like that he's at least like putting in the effort, but I will say there are definitely holes to this that aren't taken into account.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is Hub G rank Tigrex in 2nd gen, for example, in Freedom Unite, let's take that. That was the only Tigrex available, so it would make sense that the damage or whatever other values are juiced up and are at a higher level because, well, in comparison to the base form of something that has like a frenzied version or an Apex version or hyper or whatever you want to, throw out there, because that is the supposed to be that more challenging content where they're factoring that in. So yeah, like you say, maybe Frenzy Tigrex or 140 Apex, that sort of thing is a more fair comparison with its placement versus G rank Tigrex being the only option. So therefore it makes sense that it's more difficult,
Yeah. So take what you will of the test if you're watching at home, but just know, there are levels to this and intricacies that simplifying things too much can lead to, oversights in the way that the game's designs are. If it's not one-to-one. It's not one-to-one.
Two things can be true, as I always say.
A 140 GQ Apex T-Rex is hitting way harder than T-Rex from Freedom Unite, more than likely. Does that mean 4U's in a harder game? So like that. Those are the kinds of questions you should begin asking yourself. There's levels to this. Let's continue.
The Atrocos set at base begins with 670 defense before you even use your first armor sphere. So why are you only whining about 4th gen? What about Gen 3? I hear you say. Well, as previously discussed, Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate gave you bonus defense from the start. So not only is the damage formula reduced, but you have natively more defense. But shouldn't you be just as angry then? Well, I would be if it wasn't for the fact that 3U has kicked my butt in such a way that 4U hasn't been able to. There are many, many monsters in 3 Ultimate that have triple carded me more than once on my low rank playthrough. Even with the less harsh defense formula and the extra native defense, I lost to Lagaya Cruz multiple times before I was able to fell him on my playthrough. Simply put, I'm not mad at 3 Ultimate because What does
that tell us, right?
So that's another form of anecdotal, yeah.
Yeah, you have bonus defense, but yet you had a more challenging time. So, and with the damage formula being lowered. That's exactly it. So there's other things that are factoring in. Obviously, what armor are you using? That sort of thing. And, I mean, if he was going to do the same test through 3U, if he had a much harder time, I wonder what would happen if he went through with 41... Well, you can't even have 41 defense. It would be 50 without any armor. But, let's say he redid everything. It was at 50 defense. He did all the tests. You have no armor in 3U, and you have 50 defense on Freedom Unite and 4U. And then what was the experience like? Maybe there's something instructive to be gained there. But yeah, it's interesting that he's making this point, because it's anecdotal a lot of the time with all these elements going on.
Yeah, my big thing is, despite the damage formula being watered down and the innate defense, he's like, I still got fucked up. Well, could it have been because of underwater and he wasn't used to underwater combat? That's
potentially.
That's a whole nother thing, and that's another example of whenever the type of fights change, and like movesets can change even for weapons you're familiar with. Things like that, like you have to get used to different things. There is chance for more struggle, because there's a new learning curve to overcome. Now, I like what you said earlier about how okay, he's been criticizing the damage formula and all these different things for 4U, but it's more egregious in 3U, but he's still got, beat up by it. What's this say about him? Or what's this say about this video?
Obviously, we'll let him cook a bit in a minute, but yeah.
True. We'll let him finish the 3U portion.
Felt it has challenged me sufficiently. Now, with these formulas in mind, let's break down the damage that these monsters can do with each attack at their disposal.
Okay, he said it.
Maybe he's finished.
Yeah, he said it challenged. He felt satisfied with the challenge of 3U, which is ironic.
And he mentioned laggy.
Yeah,
as one example.
Well, it's ironic because the previous video that I reacted to with Alpha.
Yep.
The guy was like, you can sleepwalk through the game. You can be brain dead through the game. And he's specifically talking about 3U mostly in that case. So that it is funny. I find it a little humorous. And that's just another example of there are different goalposts for different people, and anecdotally people have different experiences. And you brought up perspective earlier in the video. People have different perspectives. So we'll see what he's doing with the damage formula stuff again.
See how they compare with 41 defense. Let's start with Freedom Unite Village Absolute Power Tigrex. Tigrex has a total of 7 attacks. The attack modifier for the Village Absolute Power Quest is 1.15, and the attack powers of the attacks, as well as the damage they did at 41 defense, will be displayed now. Now the 4U Village tipping the scales Gormagala. Gormagala has 13 attacks. 2 of his attacks do different damage depending on where he hits you. The quest has an estimated attack modifier of...
Okay, this is more or less a lot of the same stuff we've been going over. Attacks, damage formula, different design philosophies. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Tired of
that's
talking about
completely
the same.
Completely fine. It's interesting that he didn't talk more about 3U. I would have thought that he would comment more about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the video is mostly about 4U, and he said, you know, that all these criticisms don't really apply to 3U because he felt sufficiently challenged. A lot of Monster Hunter feelings come down to feelings and vibes rather than like actual quantifiable data. Because, you know, as we've hammered home in this video, depending on what weapon you play, depending on the different changes, depending on if you're decent with a different matchup against a specific monster, something can challenge you, something could be easy to you. And, you know, like there's... apparently 3U was not easy to him, not the same way 4U was. So I assume that the major comparison he wants to make is with something more verifiable, like Freedom Unite. He seems to be clearly a fan of Freedom Unite, and that may be the Monster Hunter he has most experience with. And that one does have like verifiable data that, you know, you can point to that game specifically and be like, yeah, things did more damage with this much defense. You know, so it's like, I assume maybe that's why he's mostly using that as the comparison point and not necessarily 3U. Because I would imagine if you were to try to compare 3U with 4U, it would come down to, well, feelings and vibes, you know, which just isn't as strong as here's raw numbers. So I assume that's why he's mostly not going over it. But let me see if
damage the tyrant's strongest attacks. If a game's are, then 4 indicator of the monsters present in the game as a whole, as I believe they are. If
Wait, hold on.
Indicator of the monsters present in the game as a whole, as I believe they are, then 4 and by extension 4 Ultimate is severely lacking. The visuals and monster designs in this game are truly breathtaking. It introduces so much to the series that I enjoy, but it ruins it by spitting in the faces of people like me that know what we want out of these games. Put simply, people like me want to enjoy the thrill of overcoming...
I love this because it's it's common to this day. Oh, this jobber monster looks so cool, but oh, he'd be more memorable if he actually fought me well. It happens all the time. I'm not gonna stir up trouble, but there's people I can think of that they have entire videos and they have sections just like this where it's like, Tetranodon deserved better. Doshiguma deserved better. You know, like all these different things.
Well, he's just talking about here, about, you know, the if you rewind like 5 or 10 seconds, I just want to hear this again, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But it ruins it by spitting in the faces of people like me that know what we want out of these games. Put simply, people like me want to enjoy the thrill of overcoming a monster throughout the whole experience, not just in the end game, which really, it's the most extreme of monsters that really can do that in 4 Ultimate. When people like me crack open...
Okay, so this is we've been talking about this throughout of, you know, him wanting that experience because that is how it was before as opposed to it being towards the end of the game. And hey, I get it, man. Like, I get it. That was what was going on before, but he just said he's coming in with, you know, the expectations and wanting that, you know, the thrill of the challenge and all that sort of thing. But I have to ask, like, if the games are both offering that just at different points, is that really, like, enough of a basis to say MH4U disappointed me? Right?
Well, I mean, it's the argument of the game gets good after 15 hours or like 10 hours. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so it's like I'm not gonna like completely fault anyone for feeling this way. Different strokes for different folks. I keep coming back to that, but it you can't, even though yes, the majority of your time on your save file will probably be spent on the in-game elements and the hardest challenges. Yes. And that's exactly the expectation that I play with. You know, I'm gonna have fun just fucking up these little jobbers, and then I'm going to, you know, spend the majority of my time, the bulk of my time, farming the hard shit. Some people, they don't want to spend 15 to 30 hours on stories and then fight the hard shit. Some of them, they just like the story and then they won't farm the hard shit at the end, or, you know, maybe they'll do both, but they won't be happy about the first 30 hours not giving them ball tickling, anus clenching moments as much. You know, so yeah, that's what I, you know, boil it down to.
Yeah, I get it. Like, it's those two different buckets of where the challenge lies. So yeah, I understand it. I truly get it. But for me, it's like, okay, is the game still offering that? Yes. It's just at a different point now. And I get the whole, that, you know, that point about after however many hours the game gets good, or it's delivering on what you were expecting. And hey, a lot of games are like that. It's like, as with a lot of different things, a lot of the best elements of those games are, you know, at the end, or TV series or movies or whatever. Like, it could be anything, you know. Is that a point against whatever it is? Maybe not, because it's still delivering on what you wanted. It's just at a certain point further in. You know, I don't know if that's a deal breaker, really, for me at least. I couldn't say for sure, but
you know, I think it's a saying. Different type of blood. You know, I think out of anybody that could make that argument of like, Monster Hunter used to be more focused on the moment-to-moment progression from low rank to high rank, because it literally was created that way. You know, considering even the first inception of Monster Hunter as a whole didn't have G rank and wasn't created in mind with that. And, you know, they would begin moving away from that as they found that the expansion model to work better, and, you know, different things becoming more popular in different ways. The people that grew up with that version, or maybe that's where they started, or maybe they like that more, you know, I can definitely see them making that argument and it being compelling. For people that started, you know, Portable Third and up, to make that argument, it's a little not just foolish but hypocritical in some ways, because it really does boil down to, oh, you had new things to learn, and that's where a lot of the difficulty came from. Not from the actual fights themselves, but the learning process, which we can chalk up 3U potentially doing that for him too, because of underwater potentially as well. You know, so new things to learn, satisfying challenge. Those things go hand in hand. If this guy is a Freedom Unite hit, I'll give him a little bit of pass for this argument. You know, like,
oh yeah, I respect it.
Yeah, I'll give him a little bit of pass, but this is my counterpoint. At this point of Monster Hunter, like even 2 years ago, when this video was made, at this point, Monster Hunter has spent more of its time in its current iterations and style and design philosophy than it did in the low rank and high rank, are all like just as like important to make armor sets, and everything's a bit more clinchy, and you had more things to worry about, like guaranteed true combos off of roars, and you had more counterplay that you had to do. In fact, the games quite literally in second gen and first gen were made not to main one weapon. They were made in mind with you playing different weapons to counter specific monsters. That's literally what the games were designed around. And there's dev interviews that actually support that. Literally, they changed Monster Hunter starting in third gen to make it more accessible to play with one weapon to main. Like, that's how different they've been making Monster Hunter.
It's been 15 years or whatever it is. Like, it was 10 years up to, well, 2009 or whatever it was. Like you say, the majority of the series has been in this era now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not making like a get with the program argument, but I'm making you are longing for something that the series grew out of, and it's no longer that way. And
yep,
it is an unfair comparison to try to be like, this game isn't exactly like this game that I enjoy more, therefore it is disappointing, whenever the foreshadowing has been there. Of course, 4U is reminiscent of Portable Third and 3U and Jin and Jin U, and so on and so forth in different ways. It's all a similar design curve. It's just
a great point.
It's a hard thing to. It made more sense with the Mazeron video. Mazeron's video was 10 years old. Mazeron hadn't even played 4th gen. Mazeron, at that point, the majority of Monster Hunter was 1st and 2nd gen. Like, that video made sense. That video made more sense. I'm not trying to just completely discount this, but at this point, yes, Monster Hunter has changed. For, better or worse of the way that you like it, whatever, it's not like it's a surprise. And my thing is, like, you should temper your expectations in a realistic and sound manner, not in some like dreamy way that's foolish. Like, you should be looking at how the games have been working and different trends that they've been following, because they do have certain trends that they do. And not to say that missteps are permissible because of their trend, but I'm saying maybe if you knew you're going to be disappointed, maybe you should have skipped that one. Or maybe, like, for a new gen title, for example, maybe you shouldn't have bought it on launch whenever all of the new gen games have been way better after all their title updates, and also their DLC with all the title updates as well. So it's like there's just all sorts of different things that could be chalked up to. Dog, you gotta try to enjoy it as it was made, not as a way that you want it to be, kind of deal. Yeah,
it's a balance. Like, we are coming in with some form of expectation about, okay, this is what's been previously established. This is kind of what these games are offering. But we also need to be approaching things on, be ready to approach things on these games' terms, of not always being the same and changing things, that sort of thing. I'm not saying it's okay to, obviously disregard, things that are probably needing to be changed or adjusted and that need work and things like that. But yeah, in an ideal world, obviously we'd have a lot less issues and less things to talk about that we want to see improved, and things would be in a better state, and in that we'd be living in that perfect world where everyone would be happy. The base progression is offering the right amount of challenge for those people that want that. The end game stuff is offering the right amount of challenge for the people that want that too. Obviously, we're not in that world, and like you say, you need to temper your expectations. But I understand folks being in different camps of, like, okay, someone started, like, here, in, if they're a 2nd gen player or whatever it may be, the base progression was this, and now it's not, not offering what I was expecting, or there's been a departure from that. And it's a fair, view to have. Just as my view of, I started in Try, there really wasn't, in-game pinnacle content until 3U. Obviously, they started to bring those and yes, there's like World Eater Devil Joe and things like that in Try, but, or the Gen Moran that had 1,000,000 HP or whatever it was. But, aside from isolated cases, the end-game stuff is really, the genesis of it was 4th gen, and I've been shifting my expectations, and that conditioning has taken place with me where, I'm not expecting things to be as they were in 2nd gen, where the base progression is going to bust my hump and I'm going to need to make armor every 5 seconds and all that sort of thing. I'm expecting more of that to come at the end of the game. So just as though his view of I want the base progression to be still offering that challenge is fair, my view of I'm happy to kind of let that be as it lay, but I'm wanting and expecting there at least to be the difficult stuff at the end of the game. That is also fair, you know? Different strokes for different folks, like you say. So, yeah, 100% agree with what you're saying as well. And the timing of this video, like you say, is interesting because Mazeron was talking about the break point of Tri and 3U, third gen, being a departure from a lot of this older style of design, you know, the damage values, things like that. So it is interesting, this video coming out a couple years ago and then discussing 4U as his break point when he acknowledged that 3U was a sufficient challenge for him, when one could make a strong argument that 3U was actually third gen, was actually the break point of where this stuff started to happen.
And a lot of people argue that
You know?
3U is easier than 4U.
Yeah, you could
Which
make
is
that argument.
Also kind of funny with this video in mind.
Yeah, you could definitely make. I would probably agree. You know, obviously there are those event quests, Abyssal, Laggy, Lucent, that sort of thing. There's isolated cases, as with everything, that is still going to be pretty challenging. But yeah, I would definitely concur on that and say that, yeah, guild quests, 140 guild quests, definitely, I think, are providing a lot more of a challenge, especially at the end game, than 3U. I can't really talk about progression, I guess, as much. I'd need to think about that one. But yeah, at least in the end game, for sure, I would say 3U's probably offering an easier experience.
Okay. All right. I know we just went over a lot there. Let's
Yeah. Let's keep it trucking.
Yeah, we don't have too much video left, so let's get her done.
Open what's affectionately called the single greatest monster hunter. After playing the gem that is Freedom Unite, we expect not to be insulted, and by its nature and design philosophy, insult us it does. Monster Hunter 4.
I mean, there is, like, I know we just picked up, but he's talking about 4U's reputation. It's no new thing that 4U is often touted as like the best offering of Monster Hunter, period. You know, 4U is one of the darlings of the franchise. People glaze 4U to high hell. If you put 4U below S tier on your Monster Hunter tier list, you're gonna have comments calling you an idiot. Which is exactly what happened to Monster Hunter, by the way. Shout out to Mon, by the way. That dude's actually a goat, dude.
Legend.
But the it is like, I see where maybe he made this video. It's like seeing all the sentiment about 4U, and it's like, well, where's the love for my baby? You know, where's the love for Freedom Unite? And kind of like making this video as like a retaliatory thing. Someone could say, oh, that's just him being petty then. But no, I think that's actually an interesting facet to the discussion. Whenever someone's like glazing something to high hell, you could be like, well, I think this one's better, and here's the reason why. And he's bringing numbers and all these other things, and sure, a lot of the tests are flawed and all that. I think there's definitely something commendable with not just being a contrarian. I don't think he's being a contrarian. I think that he's got valid viewpoints with what he's, asking for. He definitely prefers the more second gen style of progression, and there's something to be said about that. But I think things like this are welcome. General majority viewpoints or whatever. Sometimes the agreeing with the popular viewpoint isn't, it's the opposite of contrarianism. It's echo chamber. People that have no idea what they're talking about, glazing something they have no idea what they're talking about. So like, it is what it is. It seems like he gave, man. Yeah, it seems like he gave 4U like an honest try, and he did like find reasons why he disliked it, which is better than someone who's just talking shit on something they don't understand. I'll give kudos to Braun for that.
He's putting a lot of effort into it, and like you say, it's a hell of a lot harder to come to the party with, standing on something that you believe in, and then providing reasons why, rather than just going, oh, yep, this is the universally held opinion, and that's how it is. You know, obviously just, yeah, takes some balls to do that, and that's what it's all about, is providing reasons why you believe in stuff and then standing on it and opening yourself up to having your mind changed and not speaking on things as though they're definitive and as though you have all the information or anything like that, or just passing off obviously your own experience as, you know, something objective or whatever it may be. So yeah, I mean, 100%. He's putting the effort in, so respect to him.
Definitely.
Ultimate suffers from a flawed design philosophy. The producer for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate said this is certainly the easiest Monster Hunter game for a newcomer to get into. Not to say that it's an easy game overall, of course. The producer here admits that this, at the time, was the easiest Monster Hunter game to start.
I think my biggest issue with this right now is that 4U has, and 4 also, has the long-ass tutorial section in Village. In fact, it's so long that there are people that actually, they don't even play 4U because of it. Like, they don't like replaying it. And then I've seen people, funny enough, Oceanus on Twitter mentions that he hasn't played through 4U completely, and it's because of the slow start in the tutorial section. And it is very long. And I think it's the longest out of any Monster Hunter game, I think. And it's one of the points of criticism people have had about 4U. I would say it's Sugimoto is probably talking about, or that's, why am I saying Sugimoto? That was Ryozo. I'm pretty sure that's probably what Ryozo's alluding to. Not just, oh, we made the monsters brain dead and have brain worms and made the game baby game so that it could be casual for fans. No. For one of the first times in series, Monster Hunter has a huge ass fucking tutorial. So like, yeah, I don't think this is the most compelling or gotcha that he could have pulled out. if you want my honest opinion. Let's move forward.
The problem, though, with lowering the difficulty to such an insulting degree is that you don't learn anything, or at least not enough. So once you finally hit the ranks that everyone lauds this game for, you're completely and utterly lost. You have no idea what to do because you've never had to try. Heightening the difficulty is a standard of Monster Hunter games. Each rank of hunt is designed to be
something about that, actually. I know we're stopping quite a bit, but just something quickly on that. The whole idea of the difficulty being reduced and you're not learning anything. I mean, for a new player, if you're coming in and you don't know what you're doing, I feel like it's pretty, like, you know, making armor sets, how armor skills work, upgrading weapons, the importance of gathering, carving, the importance of breaking parts. There's a lot to learn. And if you're a new player coming in, I still feel like there's a lot of learning to be done. And obviously he's approaching this as an experienced player. So he already knows the base premise of the game and what he needs to do, all these other things, right? But he's speaking as though that's a generally, you know, a generally held thing. It would be more apt to say, yes, the need for you to engage those mechanics is less, and he's obviously made a point about that if you're a more experienced player and you already know what you're doing. But for newer players that are coming in and trying to figure these mechanics out, I think that's still there. There's still a ton to learn, and I can't say that newer players wouldn't still be going through those motions, fighting tougher monsters, learning how to make armor sets, learning how to upgrade their weapons. I don't think it's as simple as just there's no learning like he's describing, you know?
Yeah, and there's a case to be made for that for like every Monster Hunter game because they are complex. And funny enough, despite his feelings towards 3U, the exact same thing he's proposing for 4U is the exact thing that Mazeron proposed about 3U. So, in fact, Mazeron dug harder than Braun dug against 4U. Braun argues that the later fights that are challenging, the game doesn't prepare you for, while Mazeron argues that there is no challenging fight in 3U.
Yeah, Mazeron's a bit of a mad lad.
Yeah.
Speedrunning and all that jazz.
So that's the funny thing, right? Like different lines, different goalposts. Both of them use Freedom Unite as the point of comparison. You know? And so, yeah, people, whenever they start, they can get beat up by anything. I heard people got walled by Great Jaggy, dude. Like Great Jaggy. and that's the thing, right? There's always going to be people that suffer through having to learn. And you know,
I got walled by Baroth in Try
yeah,
when I was 11 or whatever, but like there's so many things that go into that. Like I don't know what I'm doing, what the hammer, I was using hammer, I was bouncing off the head, like a lot of different things. Like I got walled by that, which sounds stupid, but there's reasons as to why it happened, but it doesn't mean that there's conclusions that I can draw from that and apply in a wider sense, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, that's part of learning. You know, you have something to learn, you struggle more.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. Let's move forward.
More
Sorry,
challenging than the
continue.
last. However, the issue that 4 Ultimate suffers from, and by extension every game that follows, is none of the monsters in the beginning ranks are much easier or harder than any other one, minus a couple of exceptions. If you can kill a Great Jaggy, then you can kill a Celtus, a Zamtrios, and a Najarala. None of them require anything more than bashing your head against them until they die.
That's a little reductive, but we've already talked about that.
That is until you get to Shagaru. Shagaru is the only fight in Lowering Village that actually tests any of your skills. He's fast, he's aggressive, he hits hard, he never gives you a break.
Even then, it depends on what weapon you use.
Yeah.
Yeah, depends
But
on what
now
weapon
he's
you
getting
use.
to that point of like, okay, Tigrex and its placement within that game. Now, okay, what is Shagaru looking like at, you know, as its placement?
True, we were talking
towards the
about
end of
how
Village.
Gore
Yeah.
warms you up for Shaggy, and he doesn't bring
Yeah,
up Shaggy
so
and
let's-
compares it to
let's
Gore.
see.
Well, like, that's
Let's
the
see
funny
what he
thing,
says,
though.
right?
Like, he's talking about how Shagaru, he's like comparing him the same way to Tigrex. He's like, oh, he doesn't stop. He doesn't give you openings. It's like, I only had to drink one of my own potions against Shagaru on my
Yeah.
first playthrough. I had to drink more on my second playthrough with a different weapon, which I will be revealing in a different video. But the first time I played, I only had to drink one of my own potions. I didn't feel that challenged by Shagaru. But, you know, I also am not talking about how the game was baby mode easy, brain dead,
Yeah.
baby, and
And you've fought Shagaru many other times in many other games. And all
yeah,
these
I've
other
also fought
facets that come
Shaggy
into
and Sunbreak. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
He's everything that Gore Magala should have been.
it.
It's because
Well,
he's
yeah,
what
I mean,
Gore
it's-
Magala's trying to be.
It's almost as though Gore is a mid-tier fight as its placement within that game.
Sorry, Braun.
And
That one is laughable, man. You
And-
gotta
and
stop,
Tigrex
dog.
Is not at that equivalency with its placement within that game. Nothing against him, but I mean, hey, we've kind of preempted that.
Also,
you know?
you know what? I can't believe I caught this earlier. I didn't catch this earlier. He's got health boost on. The entire run, he's got health boost on.
Yeah, but does he... Is that because he's not eating to equalize the health?
No,
he's
because
eating
you wouldn't
in
have full health
freedom
until
tonight?
you fight Shaggy. And that's only if you do the Rathalos optional right before his fight.
Right.
So like running...
Does he have full health in against Tigrex?
Yeah, he has full health against Tigrex. Or I'm not sure, like, he mentioned something early, like in the beginning of the video about like parameters to kind of match. Health boost is very strong. Like even in old gen, where it wasn't as good as like Worlds because it didn't give you an extra 50 HP. Health boost has always been strong during low rank progression before you could eat for 50 health.
Yep.
Because it's just additive.
And no, depending on feline foodie, like we have no idea. Like this test all of a sudden is a lot more interesting because it's like, okay, is he using max potion every time he dies after
Yeah.
Tigrex?
Yeah.
Like what set?
I think he
is
mentioned
I don't know
something
what-
about
if
that.
he showed his set.
I think he mentioned
Yeah.
something about the stuff. But yeah, foodie, the thing about like health boost though is you can get it as early as Tetsukabra. and I don't remember like how much health boost you can get. You can get a pretty sizable amount. You can have way more health than you're supposed to have, like via food skills, early, and that paired with defense will make you near unkillable if you play decent. But that's being resourceful. That's building. That's preparation. You know.
Yeah, dude.
That's filling in the gaps for your weaknesses. That is very much so Monster Hunter. And he mentioned earlier about how you can skip that portion of Monster Hunter. You don't have to engage with the thing. You don't have to engage with one of the core mechanics. He's engaged with the core mechanic in a certain way just by having health boost 50, health plus 50. That is engaging with the game. He has increased his effective health by 33.3%. Which is actually just as significant as increasing your defense probably by like 80 to 100.
Yep.
All things considered.
We'll have to go and see, like, if we get, once we finish here, it'd be interesting to just go and check out his set again.
Yeah.
Like the preparation to just go and see, because I don't know if he is using health boost against Tigrex or what the situation is there.
He mentioned max potions.
Let's revisit that.
He mentioned max pots because he's got full health against Tigrex up there.
Right.
So he's max potting every time he goes down.
Right.
But that's funny though, because this is still engaging with the mechanics of the game. Like sure it's very, very strong. Yeah, whatever. You're still engaging. You know, your experience is different. And yeah, it would fall off later on in the high ranks where you would have that HP anyways via food skills. But I find it weird that he didn't mention that or talk about it in that way. But yeah, I just fucking caught that. Can't believe it.
Yeah, let's see. We could check that out later just quickly and see what the...
Well, no. That's the only way he's got
health
full health against Tigrex. There's not really... We don't really have to verify because he's got full health. Like, we can clearly see he's got full health bar.
Right.
And he...
No eating, and it's just ancient potion, max potion.
Yeah, whether it's health boost
or whatever it is,
or max pots, like he's got full health. The parameters are still the same defense and everything. But it just it is funny because the armor skill health boost is part of build making. You're engaging with the game.
Yep. And he's got decorations as well, by the way.
Yeah,
so
he does.
whatever slottage.
It looks
I don't know
like
if those are
red decos. It looks like that's health boost potentially.
Health boost should be green. It might be to remove a negative skill or something like that.
Actually,
possibly.
maybe. Wait, I'm pretty sure health up is red in 4.
You could be right.
I think health up is red. Maybe. I don't remember. I don't remember.
Right. But that is, and obviously it's for the sake of the test.
Yeah.
You know, but pretty interesting that he's, you're engaging with the game to some extent by, setting this test up in an interesting way. So
yeah, and one of his points was you don't have to engage with the building mechanics, and he clearly is engaging with it. Whatever.
Or he wouldn't be using this armor,
we caught
probably.
You. Braun, we caught you, buddy.
He wouldn't be probably, obviously this is for the sake of things being apples to apples, or trying to, but he probably wouldn't be using this exact setup, obviously playing through the game. He'd be using probably something, whether it's Velociprey armor or whatever it may be in terms of starting gear.
Well,
but even though health boost is very strong, there's other options too that he could be using.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay.
My only issue with Shagaru is that I beat even him wearing the same weak chainmail armor that I beat everything else with.
With health boost 50. But you would have had 50 HP anyway. So you know what? Actually, fuck me, Braun. You're right.
All the positive attributes that he possessed, and
Or
it
just
still
bringing max
wasn't
potions.
enough to overcome an average at best Monster Hunter player with trash armor. But when you play G rank in the games you're complaining about, some of
this is actually another problem I have with a lot of Monster Hunter players. They'll call themselves average, but they're clearly not. Because the average player playing Monster Hunter isn't actually able to get through these games without a cinch. I mean,
got the
even
data on
like
how many people didn't get through World or Xenojiva or whatever, those achievement statistics on where folks actually
literally
left the
over
game.
half of every platform did not even beat HR Xenojiva.
Yeah.
Like the average player, I don't think people understand just how bad the average player is. The average player does not play like Braun does. Braun,
Yep.
if you are listening, I doubt you're listening. If
Give
you are
yourself some
listening,
credit, dog.
you are not average. You are seasoned, first and foremost, but also you are at least decent to good. The average player is not good at Monster Hunter. That's just plain and simple. If you're bad at Monster Hunter, I'm not making fun of you. Just take comfort in that you probably relate to the majority of the people playing the game. And that's cool. That's fine. I hope you're having fun.
Or playing the game at a higher level, more than an average level. He's, like you say, seasoned, probably playing at, a pretty comparable level to what a lot of experienced players are playing at, which is not average.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Some of those monsters still do massive damage. How can you still say they're weaker than monsters from Freedom Unite? I'm glad you asked. Let's examine that. Looking at the chart here, we can see that because of the change in formula, the effective defense that hunters are capable of accumulating in games post-Freedom Unite is massive, and the quest modifiers have to be increased by a multiple factor just so they can do the same damage. Out of the games that we
That's a moot point. It's called game design.
have quest data for, we can compare the number of quests that actually meet or exceed the necessary attack modifier in order for the monster to rival the strongest monsters in Freedom Unite. It's evident by the information found that these games on average don't come close to the same damage potential of Freedom Unite. Only a minuscule number of them can outdamage Freedom Unite monsters based on their quest modifier. Granted, not all monster attacks have the same base power. For instance, it's been commonly believed that the Nakarkos beam has an attack power of 200. That for sure dwarfs basically any attack that a Freedom Unite monster can perform just based on the attack power alone, right? Not really. A Cantor and Eucanlos in Freedom Unite have a howl or beam that has an attack power of 180. If you get hit dead on by either of these, you're dead. If they just graze you while enraged and you're not at 150 HP, you're dead instantly. But the thing is that these quests aren't even the ones with the highest attack modifiers. They actually have a below average quest modifier for G rank. The modifier for the Eucanlos and a Cantor event quest is 3.5. The average G rank quest modifier is 3.6, which is the equivalent to 10.8 in GU and 13.2 in Worldborn. On average, the quests in those games don't come close. So again, as far as monsters in newer games that can outdamage Freedom Unite monsters, it's almost pointless to mention them. Let's talk for a minute about the difficulty progression in Freedom Unite. It is my opinion that Monster Hunter Freedom Unite has the best difficulty progression of all the games in the series that I have played. Every star level that you increase feels more difficult, from beginning to end. 2-star quests will pressure you more generally than 1-star quests. 3-star quests and 5.
But that's also true for 4. It's just this is not Braun, this isn't the strongest argument. Just because you're basing it off of vibes and feelings, the monsters do get stronger across the different star ranks in 4 and 4U. Like the pressure that they put on you, different things. Design wise, yes, they do. So like your argument for Freedom Unite being better because of it doing that, in fact, all the Monster Hunter games do the same thing. So it's nothing special.
5-star quests.
Listen to what he has to say. But yeah.
Yeah.
So every star rank you're gonna have. Hey, is anybody really saying that Rathalos is not offering an increasing level of challenge as opposed to whatever came in the rank before it?
Yeah,
Probably not.
Exactly.
Hey, even the change of ranks is a gradual but noticeable increase in difficulty. Low rank Rathalos is just easier than high rank Kutku. The Wrath can't outdamage it. The Rathalos has more attacks at its disposal, but the Kutku doesn't have to hit you as much to take you out. You feel the difference. But because of how difficult that Rathalos was when you fought it, it taught you skills that allowed you to manage that Kutku. It taught you how to survive, how to regroup. You couldn't just swing your weapon and kill it before it killed you. It's in this way that Freedom Unite teaches the hunters progressively how to deal with the ever-increasing threat of what comes next. G rank in Freedom Unite is a...
Well, that's... Rathalos in 4U taught me how to look out for Roar into Fireball. Rathalos was the first monster to hit me with a true combo in 4U. I learned how to position myself in such a way that even if I got caught in the roar, I wouldn't get hit by the fireball. And that prepped me for other true combos. Even though they're rare, it did prep me for other true combos. And I'm a seasoned player that's killed many different versions of Rathalos. So, yeah, low rank Rathalos
And that
did
has
teach
been
me
in a
something.
ton of games.
Yeah.
Like Rathalos Roar into Fireball has like been in a ton of other games.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So like
it's been around for a long
getting
time.
yeah, so like exactly when I go back and I do play like Freedom Unite, that'll be one thing that I'm actually prepared for that I wouldn't have been had I not fought low rank Rathalos in 4U. So like this is another like anecdotal thing of like, well, it doesn't teach you anything. Well, there's nothing more to teach you. You say that about Freedom Unite. I wonder if Freedom Unite was his first game. I have a sneaking suspicion it was his first game.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, we'll see what he ends up, finishing off this point with. But I mean, I don't know why you would make the point about this, like low rank Rathalos versus like, and think about HR Pookie Pookie, right? In World, like it does more damage and it has more stats than like low rank Rathalos, right? Like that's still true across the series where like, yes, a higher tier monster in low rank gets eclipsed in terms of damage or, other values from like a low tier high rank fight. That's what he's talking about. That progression is still there.
I think he's just not, I think what he's trying to say, and he's not saying it eloquently. I think what he's trying to say is that the previous fights don't prepare you for what would be considered harder fights. Or fights that escalate the difficulty. I don't think he used the best example, but I think that was the crux of his statement, is like, by the time you start fighting stuff in high rank, you're not prepared in these other games because the low rank is so easy or whatever. Meanwhile, in Freedom Unite, my baby, you're prepared and ready. Because
right.
I think that's like his if I'm still manning for him, But let's see.
Beast. But the jump from HR6 to HR7 is marginal enough that it's not unfamiliar and overwhelming. Now take 4U, a game where you literally don't have to make anything more than Rarity 1 armor to get to high rank, where once you make your first high rank set, you'll pretty much be okay until G rank.
But didn't you also make 41 defense armor to fight T-Rex and successfully pulled it off? So technically you could run through Freedom Unite with level 1 armor. I mean, just saying, if you're
good enough as a player, which apparently he is only an average player.
But everyone could do it in 4U. Anyone could do it. So
he just said Shagaru was difficult, more difficult, as far as low rank is concerned.
Not trying to pick at you, Braun, but you can see the inconsistency there. Like, you're doing this test and you successfully tackled T-Rex. You could theoretically run through Freedom Unite with the same parameters. But yeah, it's just a little fun. Poking a little fun. Okay.
What happens in G rank?
That's that whole thing about sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted. It's just that whole thing about, hey, you make crap gear or you make a starter set of gear and you see how far you can go with it. Like, that's it. So many of us do that, and that's perfectly okay. If you want to build a set of armor at every rank like you describe and have that experience, completely valid as well. But like you just said, he has demonstrated that the thing he's criticizing about going through all of low rank or whatever in 4U with chainmail, he just demonstrated he can do that same thing in a much tougher environment with Freedom Unite. So yeah, you're doing the same thing where you just see how far you can go with the stuff that you have, and that play style is completely valid. Doesn't mean that you can't draw certain conclusions about things based on that, but yeah, obviously in terms of this test and the premise for this video, just interesting.
Yeah.
Rank when the training wheels come off and reality sets in. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, by trying to be easier to pick up, insulted the player by not challenging them and not teaching them the skills they're going to need for most of the game, which is G rank. Constantly, I see new players begging for help because they're new to high rank or G rank and everything is just too overwhelming. They aren't used to the abuse that they're facing, and many of them just never finish because it's too much. Capcom has been routinely disrespecting the players and their own monsters by nerfing the ability of base monsters to threaten the player in order to promote their idiotic powered-up monster systems they keep crapping out for the sake of accessibility. And unlike popular belief, they didn't start this with World. It started with Monster Hunter 4. It's just that no one noticed, but I did. I'm sure you all will have your own takes on what I've said here. It's not my intention to despair.
I mean, can I just say about that? I mean, it's been going on for longer than that. I mean, that's the whole thing about, okay, what are we discussing as far as powered up monsters are concerned? Because if you're just talking about, okay, event quests with more damage, you could technically say that those have been dialed up and powered up, you know, for a long time.
I think the argument is for specific power states. So
yeah,
like
with Frenzy or Apex or whatever. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, which would lead to differences in balancing. So like one could make the argument that, you know, we were talking about how the Tigrexes are balanced differently because you have a version of Tigrex that is stronger, like base Tigrex. One could make the argument that especially like specific fights, like for example, Frenzy Tigrex or something. You have to fight Frenzy Tigrex, and you are facing a monster that is mostly dangerous during its frenzy state, which you can knock it out of. So there are periods of the fight where it's more chill than the version you would have fought in the previous game, where the entire time you're fighting it, it's designed around being oppressive that whole fight. And you could also make the argument, a criticism of Gormagala like that as well, where he's kind of chill and then he goes kind of crazy, and he actually resembles Tigrex in some ways with how dangerous and oppressive he can be. But it's only during those times where he's in that state, and you can knock him out of it if you play well enough. Whereas like Tigrex, he stays like that the entire time. So you can make like valid like arguments of, okay, whenever they implemented like superpower states for certain monsters, or conditional like super modes that they might have that you can knock them out of, or like even states that they have to balance around like Frenzy, they have inadvertently diluted the monster's fight as a whole because they don't spend the entire time in those states where they're dangerous. Whereas they used to just make them dangerous the entire time. Someone could make that argument. He doesn't do that. I'm doing it for you, Braun. But that could possibly be what he means when he talks about the superpower states being like dumb and the cause of casualization and things like that. I like the superpower states. I like that Gore incentivizes you to hit him in the head whenever he's in his most dangerous time because it puts you in a danger zone. I like things like that.
Right.
I don't feel like every monster has to be a meat grinder.
Yeah, that's completely. And interestingly, we are seeing like the reverse of this happening, like with new gen. Like even since this video has been made, there's been more of this where like we have these super powered like variants or subspecies or whatever that have like additional moves or things like that. But I'm completely fine, and I'm in favor of powered up monsters and subspecies or variants being the way in which they introduce more of the difficulty, you know, whereas he's obviously advocating, or you're advocating for him, that, you know, he's discussing things of like, yeah, the base monster is being diminished in favor of them doing that, when I'm fine with that, in my opinion, as a way for them to increase the difficulty at a later stage in the game.
Yeah, especially since, in my opinion, some of the powered up states have led to harder versions of monsters or even enhanced monsters that could be bullied in different ways.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Like one example would be Sunbreak, Anomaly, Seething Basilgeese, or the Metal Wraths. Because you can knock them out of Hellfire state, or you can knock them out of, or you can knock Basil out of the supercharged state through DPS checks. tying those states to anomaly state keeps them in it for longer, therefore making the fight more lethal and more fun, in my opinion. Now, some monsters actually got an adverse reaction. Zinogre got kind of gutted because of the reaction with the anomaly state. So sometimes it doesn't always work out, but when it does, it's really special. I do like that. All right, let's conclude this thing, man. Let's see what he's got.
Disparage the Monster Hunter team, or for Ultimate in general, or even to give unwarranted praise to Freedom Unite. It's just that 4U could have been so much more if they had had the guts to really challenge us throughout the whole experience. If you made it this far, I thank you for putting up with the ravings of a madman. I'd like to invite you to click post on that essay you've been working on since the video started, and to like the video and subscribe to the channel. My wife Sparrow, my daughter Jean, my cousin Cosmic, and I all stream Monster Hunter every Friday at 8:15 Central Standard Time, here on YouTube as well as Twitch. Links in the description. I hope to see you around.
That's awesome.
Okay. MH, thanks for watching this video with me, man. I appreciate you making an appearance. It's been fun. For you guys watching at home, I hope you've had fun with this one. I sure have. You have any closing statements you want to make, man?
It's been a pleasure. We have talked a lot, but it's been fun. It's been great listening to some different views on things, and yeah, just again, respect to Braun for coming to the party with, like, you know, a bit of a difference of opinion and standing on what he thinks and backing it up and trying to add some value, add some commentary. Again, discuss things, a lot of things of a difference of opinion of in regards to the testing and all that sort of thing. But it's been great otherwise. Thank you for listening, everybody. And it's been great hanging out. So thanks, man.
Hey, no problem, man. Hey, to you at home, stay meaty, my friends. On to membership shoutouts. Thank you guys for supporting me. To my meatballs, to my bacon bits. I still got Terry Bull, the lone meatball, holding it down over there. And then I've got another special thanks to my big boys, the filet mignon and the head chefs. We got Akir, Funnelloss, Monster Hunter, Set for Short, Mr. MH, El Mango. Thank each and every one of my supporters. You guys really do take the monthly stress of bills and cat food and cat litter and everything like that. You guys help me out a little bit. I appreciate it very much. I just want you guys to know that.
I've got dinner ready. Let him cook.